Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors with Pre-Singles Counseling. This is part of my Pre-Singles Counseling coaching curriculum where I design lessons and case studies based in the psychology literature on different topics. This Pre-Singles Counseling is targeted to three types of individuals. The first individual is a person who is interested in becoming single. That means that person is not necessarily interested in dating or entering the marriage market. The second individual is a single individual who is interested in entering the dating market. And then the last individual is a single dating individual who is interested in marriage. So take some time to listen to this lesson and or case study. Please leave a comment and I will reply. In addition, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell if you are interested in further topics. This is Pre-Singles Counseling, a Pre-Singles Counseling coaching curriculum. Thank you for visiting the channel. This lesson is subject to fair use, where I will comment, criticize, offer research, as well as teach and provide scholarship. The mission of the Pre-Singles Counseling Coaching Curriculum is to prepare women to enter singleness and make sound life decisions through proper planning, researching, and writing. The purpose of the Pre-Singles Counseling Understanding the Gift of Singleness orientation course is to help single women contemplate the levels of singleness before they consider moving out of singleness into a romantic relationship, potentially leading to marriage. By the end of this online course, students will be able to do the following: recall past experiences being single, dating, and struggling with emotional regulation, self-assess their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as a single individual, create 2-year and 5-year plans, and then review career plans, write tentative financial plans, and then also prepare for legacy. Single women should be knowledgeable about what it means to be single and how to navigate their singleness regardless of a decision to date or marry. This means that single women should take the necessary time to learn about their singleness, set academic, professional, and personal goals, and contemplate whether they are ready to enter the dating market. Single women should never enter the dating market without a goal and a plan. Therefore, one of the most important aspects of being a single woman is that you can plan your transition, establish a time schedule, set mating preferences, and learn about how men and women date. So here are some pre-lecture discussion questions. So are you single? This question means single without separation or dating rotation or on again, off again, boyfriend, or any other romantic relationship, including rebounding and dating. Why are you single? Are you enduring a recent separation from a romantic partner? Do you plan to remain single? What are your plans to change from single to a member of a romantic couple or marriage? Do you have a financial plan as a single woman? And you will see throughout this lecture, this orientation course, that I focus most, if not all, of the topics on having a financial plan. We oftentimes make unsound decisions based upon the fact that we don't have enough money, or we are looking for money, or we are looking for someone to cover us, and we are not covering ourselves financially. So keep that in mind. You will see throughout this orientation multiple references to financial planning. Pre-discussion. So what is your SWOT? So I'm using SWOT that you would normally see in business as a way to get you to engage your own personal SWOT. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? What are your threats? So after each section, I will ask you what your SWOT is. So what is pre-singles counseling? And here we need to establish objectives. Pre-singles counseling is based in a decision to enter or exit singleness. Pre-singles is the time period between single and contemplation of dating. There is a difference between being a single individual and being a single individual who has entered the dating market, which includes the sex market. Pre-singles counseling reflects the processes by which an individual researches, learns, and plans to navigate life either as a single, a dating single, or a single interested in marriage. So pre-singles defined. Pre-singles counseling is defined as the research processes and planning for entering a state of singlehood. The main target audience is 18 to 45 years of age, man and woman. However, middle school to high school students are considered. Processes include single to single. So that is that transitional time prior to entering the dating market at any age. Single to dating single, that transitional time prior to considering marriage. And then single dating to marriage, that transitional time prior to and after premarital counseling. Pre-singles counseling is the immediate strategy of adopting life plans to manage the self as a responsible individual adult up to and including a major life change. So, why you should embrace single. Embracing your singleness provides the time necessary for self-discovery. Embracing your singleness gives you time to create a life plan strategy. Embracing your singleness offers the opportunity to self-assess knowledge gaps, address personal issues and problems, and establish immediate goal objectives. Embracing your singleness begins the process of creating financial stability objectives. Financial stability should begin as early as middle to high school. Understanding transition. Understanding transition begins with determining if you want to enter the dating market, whether you are in high school or as an adult. Understanding transition begins with considerations of marriage, whether after high school or as an adult. The first steps towards consideration of marriage is to understand the psychology of dating the opposite sex. Understanding transition begins with setting 2-year and 5-year goals to establish records of successes and contemplate career planning. So establishing objectives, you should always begin by looking at your immediate situation. So establishing objectives should begin with determining the immediate goal. The first immediate goal is always educational. Current knowledge must be improved and updated. Making new room for new and additional concepts is necessary to advance. So this is what I tell my students oftentimes, that you have a knowledge base. Everything that you learned from the time you were in the home to high school graduation. So then, where are you going to take your head? Where are you going to take your mind? Where are you going to take your body? You must update your knowledge base. You cannot operate in life without adding new knowledge and building skills. The second immediate goal is understanding the importance of financial stability. Learning basic financial concepts is key to managing the self during adulthood. So if we don't exercise self-control in those areas where we are trusted with money, your mom gives you your school money, which is usually your lunch money, and then you spend up all your lunch money before lunch. Well, that tells you right there that you don't know how to manage money. You know that you need to eat lunch. That's not a hard goal to understand. You know you can't depend on anyone else to eat their lunch. So learning basic financial concepts is key to managing the self during adulthood. So learning those concepts when you are younger and then continuing to adopt those concepts and use and apply those concepts consistently all the way up to adulthood. Establishing objectives 2-year. So establishing objectives should begin with developing 2-year goals. The first 2-year goal is entering the workforce. Establishing objectives towards work should begin as early as possible, even in high school. Work provides the opportunity to move theory into practice. So one of the things that I teach my students is, and it's based upon where I failed. I failed with transition. And so I often teach my students about planning their transition in 2-year increments. So if you're at the community college level, you're not there just to take your basics. You're there because it gives you 2 years of planning. Once you get to the university, you don't stop planning. As soon you become an immediate junior, so that means you have junior and senior year to plan your transition after college graduation. And then, of course, if you're in the workforce, you have to pay your dues, which is usually about 2 to 5 years. And so you are consistently planning in 2-year increments. The work provides the opportunity to move theory into practice is essentially something that your mom or your dad has always said, that you got to work in order to take care of yourself. So then you go and find a job, and that puts whatever they have said about work into practice. The second 2-year goal is managing income and expenses. The first experiences with working and earning money should be noted in a financial journal. Expenses should be basic, including phone, car payment, and insurance, and related. Establishing objectives that are 5 years. So establishing objectives should begin with transitioning to 5-year goals. The first 5-year goal is transitioning from work in high school to work as a young adult, from work as a young adult to work post-college graduation. Work provides the opportunity, again, to move theory into practice and to the next levels. The second 5-year goal is managing income and expenses. Sustaining income without gaps is central to ensuring financial stability. Expenses should be basic, including phone, car payment, and insurance, and then also housing. Knowledge check. So general planning. Considering your academic, professional, and personal goals, especially in pursuit of financial stability, answer the following. What are your general planning strengths? What are your general planning weaknesses? What are your general planning opportunities? And what are your general planning threats? So, not all of us are very skilled at planning, but we have been known to create a grocery list. We have been known to create a checklist. We have been known to follow and have been exposed to some element of planning by doing some step-by-step ordering of something. So just in a general understanding of planning, we're not talking about specifics, we're not talking about context specific or environment specific, but just you yourself, you living with yourself, your understanding and understanding that you can procrastinate at times. What are your general planning strengths? Where do you plan well? Maybe pick a particular thing that you tend to plan well. So if you know you want to get on a basketball team, you know that you have to get up early in the morning to go practice, right? And you have to put in the hours to go practice, and then you go exercise. You make sure you eat something. So are you very good at planning out that schedule to get up at 4:30 in the morning, travel to the gym, exercise, put in some work, and then go to a basketball court and play, right? Practice. Is that a strength for you? If what will be a weakness in that regard? A weakness might be you get bored easily. You would rather maybe have a partner with you to practice. But if you pay attention to some people who have made it to the NBA, like Steph Curry, he has said in an interview before that he throws 500 free throws. And he's not necessarily doing that with somebody there. He's doing it alone. And a lot of times you build skill when you are alone. So you would have to confront that weakness to want to have somebody there as a practicing partner. Then what are your opportunities? The opportunity could be to maybe review interviews of, say, Steph Curry, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, or anyone else, and look at their strategies and how they strategize their day. That will be an opportunity, because the opportunity is the opportunity to learn. That means whatever base of understanding you have about practice is being challenged because you're bored. And so now you have to add new knowledge, and that may be reading articles, watching YouTube videos, listening to interviews, and letting that encourage you. And then your general planning threats could be that if you don't get that resolved, you're not going to get to where it is you want to get to. So we are always our own individual threat. So what are your plans? And your plans are essentially about becoming a single adult. Just because you are alone, just because you take care of yourself, doesn't always mean that you are a single adult in terms of your mindset. Now, you can still be a person who has a place of your own, have a job of your own, have some side money of your own, and still ask other people for money. That is possible. Or still depend on other people for other types of things. You're not a single whole sound adult. So here are your plans to think about. So this section will explore the following types of plans and topics. So there's a academic plan, your assignment plan, your gift and talent plan, 2-year plan, 5-year plan, and then 10-year career plan. So let's look at the academic plan. What is your major? And then how have you prepared for transition? The major, a lot of people say in my classes, well, I haven't picked my major yet. Well, we don't live in a time anymore where you can sort of play around with that idea. I'm going to pick my major, when I'm ready to pick my major. All fields now are becoming specialized. And so you need to have some kind of clue about what it is you want to do, so that you can go on ahead and begin planning your way through it. And then also you need to know if you are prepared for that kind of field. Do you have the mindset, for that kind of field? And so how have you to date prepared for your transition? Meaning that you are going to graduate from high school. So why haven't you already applied to colleges? I had this problem. I thought I was going to go into the military. So I didn't plan for college. And so I should have planned for a number of things, so that if one thing didn't work out, I had another thing to fall back on. And when you don't have something planned, you end up making yourself vulnerable, which also makes you end up taking anything that falls into your lap, even if it's negative. So academic plans must include an objective beyond high school learning. What are your plans to increase your knowledge capacity? You have an existing knowledge base, which includes everything you learned at home up to and including high school graduation, as I noted. Where will you now take yourself? Where will you take your head? Wherever the head goes, the body follows. Academic plans must include a transition objective to move from one state of mind to another state of mind. What are your 2-year plans between high school and college? What are your 2-year plans between junior year and college graduation? Never let anything just happen to you. You know you are going to graduate. Mark the year that you begin 2 years of planning. Academic plans must include a research objective to determine what is required for your field during and beyond college graduation. So, what are internship and volunteer opportunities appropriate to the field? If you research a job description regarding your intended career objective and that position requires X now in 2020, then what do you think it will require when you graduate in 2 to 4 years? Assess what you will need for now and for later in 2, 5, or 10 years. So if you have a particular field that is very specialized, and you go to any sort of job announcement, it can be Indeed, it can be any job announcement, and you see that the companies are asking for X number of things that you need to have through either education, experience, internships, or something like that. Just think to yourself, if they are asking that in 2020, and at the recording of this is 2021, if they are asking for those X things, what do you think they're going to be asking for right after you graduate? That's what happened to me. I majored in English, and my goal was to get a BA, MA, PhD in English because I was just going to become a professor. I am a professor, but when I was burnt out and I didn't attend school for doctoral studies and decided to enter the workforce had really changed due to social media. Social media made it all about company branding, social media exposure. So I didn't have those skills. I had to, sort of self-study and become a freelancer. But I realized that my degree was appropriate for my particular field, but it was not competitive for any other field. That I would have needed to pair it with something else, maybe technology or law, any of the social sciences, business or anything like that, so that I could enter the workforce, the business workforce. So that was a setback for me. So when you're thinking about your field, today that technology is a major factor in hiring. There is no way around that. It is a major factor in hiring. So you do best to have a minor in computers or something like that, or take some accounting courses or business law courses, anything that will help you to get your foot in the door to entry level, and then you just continue to take more courses if you want to move up. So knowledge check. So for academic plan, considering your academic, professional, and personal goals, especially in pursuit of financial stability, answer the following. So what are your academic planning strengths? What are your academic planning weaknesses? What are your academic planning opportunities? And what are your academic planning threats? So one of your strengths could be that you do very well in planning out your courses. And in planning out your courses, you position yourself well to learn, which results in high grades. One of your academic planning weaknesses could be that you only focus on your major courses. Now, in some regard, if you're going to become expert in your field, you need to have more courses in your major than any other courses. But it depends on the industry that you decide to work for. If you're going to work in a business industry, you need to have some business courses as well. What are your academic planning opportunities? One of those opportunities could be to assess the field, or choose the industry that beyond a shadow of a doubt you want to enter. It could be healthcare industry, it can be hospitality industry, it could be the academic industry, higher education industry. So you take that time to figure out which of the industries would work well for you. And all you have to do is give something 2 to 5 years, right? Because right after college graduation, you're still learning about yourself and learning about your fields, your industry. So give something 2 to 5 years and then plan your way from that. What are your academic planning threats? One of those threats could be essentially not truly understanding the field to which you are preparing to enter. So you take tons of courses, but you're not focused in directing those courses to a single goal. That will be a threat. So your assignment plan, where is your place? And this is important because you need to know to which or to whom you are assigned, and that not every place, you don't just take any job, you don't just take every job, you take a specific job that is tailored to your assignment. So your assignment defined. Your assignment is predicated on the gifts and talents you have. Fulfilling that assignment is based on your discovery of those gifts and talents. Assignment in general is defined as that task or work you must complete as part of your job or course of study. However, your spiritual assignment is a divine calling to carry out a divine purpose. It requires some discernment, preparation, and obedience to divine and earthly instructions to carry out God's intentions for a people, a place, a time, and or a season. Carrying out your assignment requires fear of the Lord, which means respect and honor. So if you think about it like this, Moses was assigned to the children of Israel, but Aaron was assigned to Moses. So you have to know if you are assigned to a person, to a group of people, to a particular advocacy, to what or to whom you are assigned. What is the actual divine calling? And then part of you fulfilling that divine calling will require obedience. That means you have to obey a divine instruction if you are called to a divine purpose, right? For Moses, it was to get the people out of Egypt. So that took some kind of exposure to that way of thinking. That's why he was, basically given up, and then an Egyptian found him, and so he was raised up in Egyptian context and thinking and laws and principles and notions and ideas, so that by the time he was to lead the people out of Egypt, he understood how to actually approach the Pharaoh at that time. He knew the mannerisms, he knew the standards, he knew the code, he knew the values. So he had to not only know that, but he also had to tune his ear to God's instruction, God's direction, when to go and when to stop, right? And you're not going to be able to fulfill the assignment if you don't know how to tune your ear. Therefore, you have to make sure that you stay out of distraction. All distraction is a form of setback. Stay out of it, right? You have too many people around you and you can't hear God, or you can't even hear your own conscience talking. You can't even hear your own mind telling you that this is not the right way to go. And then also your assignment requires that you have respect for the Lord. That means you have to have a respect and honor for the one who gave you the assignment. Discovering your assignment. What is your assignment? So are you assigned to a person, or are you assigned to a people? Do you understand your limits, and do you know your struggles? So I've already tackled the first two. The last two are interesting because you are not called to serve the whole world. And I've heard someone say this: you're not Jesus Jr., right? You're not Moses Jr., okay? There are limits to your calling or to your assignment. Eventually, you're going to have to pass the baton. You can't live forever. So it's always important that you mentor someone else and help them plan as well. So part of your limits is understanding that part of understanding your limits is understanding that you have limits. Also, if you have not taken the time to master the knowledge and develop the expertise necessary to carry out the calling, that's the limit. That you cannot go at something with just a general understanding. That's why I asked at the beginning of this orientation, what are your general planning strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats? Because that's a general understanding. Then you're going to have to move yourself to a specific understanding of what you need to know. And then your struggles. Your struggles are interesting always because do you have a predisposition to certain types of substance abuse or certain types of temptations? Do you have financial management problems? Part of carrying out the vision is managing the money. And if you have trouble managing your own money, or you don't have a respect for money, then you're definitely going to have a problem with it while you are trying to manage the assignment. You don't want people not paid. They all work for your organization, but you can't pay them, right? Not everything is volunteer. So knowing your struggles is also very, very important. Understanding your struggles should also help you to understand where you are supposed to be in terms of your assignment. So where is your assignment? Where are you most effective geographically? You can have the right gift and talent and be in the wrong place. So geography matters. So for example, if you have a gambling problem, it may not be a good idea for you to live in a gambling city. That's just in a general understanding, right? But suppose your gifts and talents are supposed to be used in a gambling city, right? In a casino city. Then you would have to make sure that you don't live near the casino, or you have to make sure that you don't visit the casino. I wouldn't want to set myself up to fail. There are many exceptions to the rule. I can't really outline them here. It's all very much, subjective because you can't live in fear. But I would venture to say that where you are is just as important as what you are. Your gifts and talents are important, but they may not necessarily work in every context. So, say for instance, you teach, okay? You have the gift of teaching, and you want to teach at the university level. And anytime you want to teach at the university level, you need a PhD to do that, or you need to be in a doctoral program leading to a PhD. You can graduate teach and then move and transition into, say, like a lecturer, adjunct, or something like that. But you want to teach at that level, but something about the environment is not conducive for you to teach at that level. Even though all of the faculty members are teaching exactly the same text or subject matter, is something about the way that you teach it is not conducive to that environment. Maybe you are being hindered, maybe you are being blocked. I hear a lot of times people who teach K through 12, there's a certain way they want to teach a subject matter, but then the principal, the superintendent, the other administrators try to block them from teaching it in a certain kind of way. But you have to think about the learner, right? You have to think about the student, how the student learns. So using your gifts and talents, discovering your assignment and using your gifts and talents are very important, but it matters where you are, that you can find more success in using your gifts and talents with your assignment in one area more than another, even though, and we often base our decisions to move from one geography to the next on money. But you can have all the money in the world and not be effective too. You can be in a very nice neighborhood and teaching private school kids, right? And still feel like you are uninspired. You just can't get the students to to be inspired, which means that you are not really inspired. So you can have the right gift and talent, but be in the wrong place. It doesn't mean that your gift and talent is wrong, but when it's placed within the wrong context, it will produce negative results. So geography matters. How have you prepared for the assignment? So what is your academic preparation? What is your professional preparation? Are both sufficient for you to carry out your assignment? Will you need continuing education? People oftentimes don't think they need education. That's why you have all these people who like to push this narrative that college is not for everybody. But as I noted in previous slides, that college, you have to add to your existing knowledge base. You can't go out and teach people and not know anything. You have to understand learning styles. You got to know how people learn and think and process. That's why a good course in psychology is very important, because you have to understand the importance of applying knowledge. So that requires you to become a student of something that you will later rule over. So if you want to be the dating coach, the number one dating coach person, you're going to have to read about dating and in the sex market and the marriage market, and all of that is in the psychology literature. It's not just in these self-help books, even though self-help books are very important, because then it would lend credibility to any of the notions that you are putting out there. You won't look like a person who is just basically opinion based, that you will have what you need backed up by evidence. Also, professional preparation. If you want to have your own business, it's important to work for a business. And then when you work for the business, it's important that you are maybe like a supervisor or coordinator or something like that, where you have responsibilities for budgeting, scheduling, and supervising people. Anybody who wants an administrative, supervisor, manager, director type of position need to be able to manage people, need to be able to schedule people, need to be able to supervise, need to be able to manage a budget. Those things are very important. So if you want to one day have your own business, you need to be exposed to a successful business. And then you need to know if both are sufficient. That means that really speaks to timeline. Just because you go to college for 1 year doesn't necessarily mean that you are fully baked. That the 4 years, that's why they set college as 4 years and sometimes some as 5 in terms of the sciences, because they understand that it's going to take that much time to process you in the thinking of that major, because the college environment really is no different than the workforce environment. You're basically going to step foot out of one and into another. And then continuing education, it just depends on the field. There are certain fields that require you to renew your licenses every 2 to 5 years by taking coursework and completing those coursework for credit. So even if you don't have that as an issue, you always want to stay abreast of new ideas, new concepts that are appropriate to your field. If you're having a business, you have to stay abreast of new tax laws, especially if they're going to benefit you and your business. You have to stay abreast of, contract principles, torts, which is injury, harm. Anything that is criminal, you want to stay abreast of new knowledge. Knowledge check. So your assignment, considering your academic, professional, and personal goals, especially in pursuit of financial stability, answer the following. Do you know your assignment? So what are your assignment planning strengths? What are your assignment planning weaknesses? What are your assignment planning opportunities? And what are your assignment planning threats? So, for a minute, if you think about assignment planning, think about it in terms of you taking a course and the teacher has given you an essay to write, a prompt. So you don't write the essay on the day the essay is due or the day before the essay is due. From the moment you get that prompt, you need to begin planning. So if the essay prompt calls for 10 sources based on a particular topic, then you need to start researching those sources. Now schedule that, right? If the essay prompt calls for integrating certain kinds of evidence, especially, statistics, you need to go and begin looking for that, because it might take some time to find that kind of evidence if you are not familiar, right? If the essay requires that you go and interview someone, okay, well, time is of the essence. The essays are usually due 2 to 3 weeks after you receive a prompt. So then, when are you going to schedule that time to meet with that person to interview? So when you think about the assignment, your life's calling, and you are assigned to a person or a group of people, your engagement with the work in terms of the preparation that you have to do, and your engagement with applying that knowledge to the people that you have to serve, that's going to take planning. So what are your assignment planning strengths? One strength could be that you're great at communicating what it is you need to do in terms of your assignment planning, that communication is not a problem for you. Your weaknesses could be that you're not good with timing, that you're going to give a speech, but you're just bad. You just arrive late. You are great at preparing the speech to talk to a group of people, but no one can depend on you to be on time. So that means you need to take that into consideration when you are planning out your assignment, right? Your assignment planning opportunities could be to maybe have a mentor to teach you how to manage your time, especially when you have to be in certain places. So for instance, if you're thinking about running for office, right, and you have to talk to a number of talk to people in a number of communities, and you got to get across town, and people don't like to wait. It's very important, because once you get them there, you need to do something with them. If they're sitting outside waiting and it's cold and raining, they're going to leave. So then you can get a consultant. The opportunity here, the assignment planning opportunity, would be for you to get a consultant to teach you how to manage your time so you don't arrive late. And then your threats, of course, are you. If the more you arrive late, the more people realize that you are not dependable. So if you're not dependable and trying to get elected, what makes us think you're going to be dependable once you are elected? So that's a big threat. All right, so your gift and talent plan, so understanding the differences. So operating in your gift or talent is important to thriving in your life. So what is your gift? What is your talent? There is a difference between gift and talent. A gift is a natural ability or talent. An example is teaching. Teaching is also considered a spiritual gift in the Bible. A talent is a natural aptitude or skill. An example of a talent is writing. All gifts and talents need a context in which to develop. So for instance, say you don't go to school to learn a piano, but at some point you're going to have to apply that gift and or talent. And with learning how to play the piano, it can be a gift in terms of you planning by ear, but then you have to build the talent portion of it, which is the skill. So that means you're going to have a piano if you're not going to go to a school. Eventually, though, if you're going to move to the next level in terms of you wanting to compete, maybe in competitions or play for a major audience, you're going to need some teacher or mentor. So then there are different types of contexts. The most important context that you could start with is by going to a school. So just about every school or community college has um, instruments that you can play on, that you can practice on, and then you have the teacher, and the teacher gives you, guidance and direction. So all your gifts and talents need context. I understand that people can avoid going to college and still be successful using their gifts and talents. But eventually you're going to run out of steam, or you're going to run into a brick wall because you don't have the record of success of practicing that gift and talent. You don't have anything to fall back. You don't have the lessons that you would have learned had you taken a course, more than one course. Because you can recognize where you are struggling in the course itself, or in your alone time when you're trying to hit the keys and the keys are not responding right the way that you want, or the music is just not becoming the music. Okay, that is all recognizable when you are within particular context. So all gifts and talents need a context in which to develop. Knowledge check. So gift and talents. Considering your academic, professional, and personal goals, especially in pursuit of financial stability, answer the following. So what are your gift and talent strengths? What are your gift and talent weaknesses? What are your gift and talent opportunities? What are your gift and talent threats? So, when you look at this, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and if you think about it being strength in terms of you can play by ear, right? You can play the piano by ear without necessarily looking at the notes on a page. Okay, something about you hitting the key, and something about it, and you just know how to respond. But the weakness would be not being able to read the music, especially if you wanted to say go and play for a symphony or an orchestra, or just for an organization overall, or play competitively, or for a band or anything. That weakness would be if everybody else knows how to read music and you don't. That's a weakness. So then the obvious opportunity would be to learn how to read music. And then the threats would be loss of work opportunities or job opportunities, those opportunities that require you to read music. A threat would be you not learning how to read music. And then, of course, you won't be able to get any jobs to take care of yourself. 2-year plan, so understanding transition. And I push this as a very important narrative because this is where I failed, and I usually teach from where I failed. So, 2-year plan, school and work. Develop an academic transition plan during the junior year of high school for college and or work. Develop an academic transition plan during the junior year of college for graduate and or work. So if you know your field enough to know that your field requires you to have a college degree to enter it, that you just can't enter the field and do a certain job without that college degree. There are fields that do not require a college degree. You don't even need a certificate, right? You just come in, apply for the job. It's an entry-level position, lower-level position. But if you wanted to move up, you may have to have a certificate, 2-year associate's degree, and then later a college degree. But you should know if your field, if your job requires knowledge beyond high school. And if it does, you're going to have to sit and take some kind of class, right? You should know if your field requires you to have a bachelor's and or master's degree, especially the master's. If in order for me to teach at the community college level, I have to have a master's degree. But if I wanted to teach at the university level, I have to have a PhD or be enrolled in a doctoral program. I would be prohibited from teaching at the university level. There may be exceptions to the rule. It depends. One of those exceptions could be that I'm the kind of person who brings in grant money. as a faculty member, right? But they still might require that I get the doctoral degree because it is a university, and for accreditation purposes, students must be taught by a person with a doctoral degree. Develop an academic transition plan for postgraduate employment. Develop a career transition plan from entry level to supervisor, from part-time to full-time work, and then develop a career transition plan from supervisor to manager. So I included both school and work because you gain insight into your future field while you are a student. And that's how I believe it is. That's why I believe it's important that you understand academic transition. Plus, you also have the professor standing before you who can tell you what to do, what to expect. You may not want to become a professor, but usually professors have worked in the business aspects of their fields. So they have decided to teach or have been teaching, but they also have a full-time job in other areas. The career transition plan is important because if you see yourself managing people, it's just in you. There's nothing wrong with seeing that. It is just in you. So then most oftentimes your jobs, or now rather, jobs now have, professional development coursework that you can take, and it's for free. And usually they have supervisor certificates. There are also programs at the community college level where you could sit for four courses to get a certificate as well. Then from part-time to full-time work, do you want to remain part-time in perpetuity, or are you interested in full-time work? Okay, so now what does the job require in terms of you being able to get on full-time? And that's going to take some time to realize that as well, to research that. Also, from supervisor to manager, supervisor may just require a certificate, but manager might require an actual degree. And it just depends on the job level, the department, the actual work that you are doing, so you have to talk to people and ask people questions and then conduct an information interview. So 2-year plan financial, develop a basic financial plan that includes base income and expenses. This requires staying on a job for 2 years without gaps. Income and expenses will give you a base for how to plan from 2 years. If you make $20,000 in your first 2 years, then the goal should be to increase those annual earnings by a certain percentage. This depends on your profession and industry. The most important thing once you either graduate from college or graduate from high school is to be consistent and build a record of work. Stay on the job. You are oftentimes given some flexibility and leeway when you're young, especially between 20 and 25. If you've job hopped between in 2-year increments, you're kind of given a little bit of leeway because it's just expected that you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to find the right type of job or the right type of place for you. You thought this would be it. Now you realize, no, this is it. So you're given some kind of leeway. But you can't be a person who continues to jump from thing to thing. Eventually, you're going to have to get somewhere and sit down and, settle down. And if I was you, I would give it, 2 to 5 years, but at least those 2 years, you're building a base income. And so that you can pay your bills, that you can pay any other types of expenses. And then you look at the money that you're getting every year and you begin to assess how much more you could make or how much you need to continue to make in order to stay consistent. Develop a 2-year financial plan that includes an emergency savings fund. So there should be funds for an immediate situation such as a flood or a natural disaster. There should be a 2-year plan to save a percentage of your income for emergency. Review process by quarter, end of year, and then by 2-year. I think this is where we go wrong. A lot of times we get very settled in whatever it is that we're doing. And so we believe that as long as we have a job and can take care of ourselves, a little bit of money in the bank is not going to hurt anybody. But what happens, as we realized that the pandemic purged a lot of jobs, just completely purged a lot of jobs, purged industries. And it was hard for people to navigate. Some folks were evicted. Some people didn't get a paycheck. And so creating an emergency savings fund is very important. It's also important when you're thinking about being part of a flood or natural disaster. As soon as the mayor or the governor of a state tells you to expect a hurricane, you need to go get some money out immediately, because it will be very difficult for you to get anything out once that hurricane hits, right? So that means you need to save money, like a percentage of your money for emergencies. So if you're saving in mutual funds and CDs, you may not be able to get to them, get access to them quickly. You need to almost think like rich people. Rich people will have investments in investment products, right? But they also have a safe in the house, and they have money in that safe. And so you need to be able to make the transition should something happen. And then you sort of review your process, how well you are saving by quarter, end of year, and then by 2-year. And you notice that you are very consistent at saving $10 from every paycheck or $50 from every paycheck for 12 months. Okay, now you look at that amount, whatever that amount looks like, right? It's going to be $1,200, right? If you're getting paid every 2 weeks. So that tells you that you can save $1,200 a year. So then if you are interested in increasing that, then you could say, let's save $100 every paycheck, paid twice a year, and then see where you are. And then you begin to build. And I've heard Susie Orman and other financial strategists say that you need to have at least 6 months of an emergency fund. So that always includes your rent, right? Your shelter costs, but then other types of bills that you have to pay or something like that. And so that is something that I believe everybody struggles with. There are a few people who got it right, who got a good understanding of money early in life. They might have been the people who had like the little lemonade stand or something like that. But regardless, something about them, they had a good understanding early enough to be the types of people who can manage money well. Develop a 2-year financial plan that considers financial investment options. So financial investment into financial products is always predicated on financial capacity and willingness. Investing a percentage of income into a mutual fund, retirement fund, or stock market is predicated on financial capacity. Investing into the stock market but not being able to pay rent and related shelter costs reveals lack of full financial capacity and financial understanding for how money should work. And then creating a financial plan that considers financial capacity is key to sustaining investments. So there is a difference between financial capacity and willingness. People say if you just save a little bit of something from like $5 out of each paycheck, that's something. And you have heard some few stories about people who only made so much a year and was able to pay off all their debts and things like that. Financial capacity and willingness meaning, are you willing to move yourself into a certain kind of understanding that I got to save money? period. I got to stop spending in this area so I can begin to save money so I can have an emergency fund. It's not always just about financial capacity. Is mostly about our willingness, because we will complain about saving, but then turn around and go and pay for nails and hair and shoes and clothes, and it costs much more than that. You're not going to go and find something for $5, unless you're going to Goodwill or a garage sale. But there is financial capacity. Okay, say for instance you only make $20,000 a year, and that's barely that. And you say, well, how am I going to save any money when I'm only making $20,000 a year? And it depends too, if you are living at home or if you are living with yourself. And it looks like the $20,000 only covers just your shelter costs and food and transportation. Of course, your phone, right? So it may be hard to do, but I am changing my understanding about that, because, I have bought coffee from Starbucks. I have bought, shoes and clothes and things like that. And I have realized that I actually had the money to save, but I wasn't willing to do it. So when you're thinking about your 2-year financial plan, maybe look at it from the vantage point of, what am I willing to save, so that I can still be able to do what I want to do, but I still make sure that I have a actual savings just in case something happens. I think it's important that you should be able to pay your base expenses, which are your rent and shelter and food and phone, right? Because we can't do really without phone today. And then some form of cable, even if it's the lowest form of cable, unless you have internet, and because you can watch everything on the internet. But as long as you have made sure that you have the full financial capacity to meet your base expenses, then look at your willingness from there. Look at the money left over, and what are you willing to take from that money? What percentage you are willing to take from that money to put into a investment product? So, 5-year plan, preparing for transition. The 5-year plan is necessary at any age, but beyond the 2-year plan, this means that you can have a 2-year to 5-year plan. The 5-year plan may involve career planning, from supervisor to manager, from manager to director, from any position to upper management. The 5-year plan may involve pursuing financial stability beyond the 2-year plan. And then the 5-year plan may involve investing more money into a retirement and or investment fund. It just depends. It depends on how much you're already paying out in expenses, right? But people don't get to upper management just by osmosis. They don't get there hoping and wishing. They plan their way up. They plan their way horizontally, and they plan their way vertically. The 5-year plan is necessary as a self-reflection tool. So you can reflect on the past 2 years to determine gaps in your understanding, gaps in your pay, and gaps in your education. You can reflect on that last 3 years to determine if your plan is still feasible. You can reflect on the last 5 years to determine the point at which the plan has been effective. And you can reflect on the last 5 years to determine your financial capacity for moving forward. So you're always in a mode of thinking about that. You had your 2-year plan, and then now you have the 5-year plan. But the 5-year plan is more about self-reflection. You going back and looking at your progress, your process and your progress. And is that plan that you had during those 3 years, between 2 and 5, is that plan feasible going forward after 5 years, right? At what point is the plan effective, and then at what point the plan may not be effective, considering maybe a job loss. So the plan that you were adopting to save $6,000, right, for example, okay, and you were doing just fine and going very good, and then the company cut your hours. So that means your financial capacity has lessened in a sense, right? It's hard to move forward with the same goals you had with a new financial capacity. So now you're going to have to think about ways in which you're going to be able to still meet your emergency savings objective while you are enduring cut to your hours that might affect your shelter costs. So it depends on if you may have to wait out your investment plan and then seek out a new job, an additional job, or wait to the company increase your hours. So that's something that you have to reflect on. And then, of course, if you begin earning more money, then that means your financial capacity has increased. And then you can look at the fact, okay, I have been effective in saving X amount of dollars. I really want to get to this 6,000. So now that I'm making more money, I'm going to increase my financial capacity, actually speed it up, and begin to increase how much I put into the investment product. The 5-year plan determines if you will be able to sustain yourself financially. Given the fact that you have completed education and established multiple financial plans, this is the time to review your progress to date. This is also the time to determine where you want to take your mind, heart, and body, your career, and your finances. So that's why it's very important that if you're going to take chances in your career, you need to make sure that you have base finances. If you're going to take chances in your life and start a business, you still need to keep the job. I always thought that you needed to quit the job to be devoted to, starting a business, but that's not key. You still need cash flow, because if something goes wrong with the business, you still can pay your rent, you still can pay your car, you still can pay any of the other expenses to keep yourself afloat. The 5-year plan is useful for gaining insight into your health needs before you move into a 10-year plan that will require more energy, work ethic, and time. A visit to the doctor to get that 5-year checkup is important. Assessing your health and what you can muster by day, week, month is important, because the next levels require more energy, time, and capacity. You must know your capacity to operate at multiple levels. Think about a person, this may not necessarily apply, but I want to give you a visual. So think about the person who wants to run and become sort of like a professional runner. Not necessarily go to the Olympics, but they run in all these, different 5K, 10K races, right? Well, there's a whole sort of body of self-help articles and information and content on the internet about how to run your first race, how to run your second, third, how to meet your running time, things like that, right? If you're just walking somewhere, a lot of times all you need is a good long stretch, and maybe the types of food that will sustain that energy. It's a 5K, right? But if you're going to run a 10K, you are practicing running a 10K every day, or 3 times a week or something like that, right? You don't run a 10K the very first day that race comes to town. You have practiced for at least a year or 2 years just to run that one 10K, because it's going to require more energy, more work ethic, more time. You need to visit the doctor. You need to look at your capacity and how you can operate at multiple levels. So if you're running a 10K in your hometown, but the obstacle course is not that difficult, right? You can run it. That's fine. But then you may want to run the Boston Marathon. Okay, that's not something that you can do just on the first try. Those people train to do that. They live in the gym. They use certain types of gym types of machines. They use certain type of protein food. Sometimes they have running partners. It's a whole lifestyle. It's work for them. They have jobs, but they take the time to build up capacity for multiple levels, right? And some of them go internationally. So it's a whole big thing. And then we're not even, talking about those big monster triathlon type of things, type activities. We're not even talking about that, because that takes even more. You're basically running every day. You are building your body and your capacity and pushing your body to the limits just to run a race, uh, a few races a year or something like that. Well, it's no different than anything that you're trying to do. If you're trying to get into a business, you need to know your capacity. Your capacity is going to be measured by your knowledge. Do you know accounting? Do you know tax laws? Do you know contracts? Do you know your industry, the specific tailoring to your client needs in that particular industry? That's why you need to do a health checkup, because some things you get into can kill you if you're not ready for it mentally, physically. You need a heart checkup. You need check your breathing. Check your ability to walk. Right. So knowing your capacity to operate at multiple levels should be something that you begin checking at your 5-year plan. The 5-year plan is useful for addressing any anxiety or doubt about who you are as a person, what you want to do, and what you want and can accomplish. Successes are intoxicating, but they also reveal anxiety about replicating success at the next level. Just because you accomplish a success does not necessarily translate as your capacity to resolve a single defining problem and achieve a solution that is universally acceptable. There is a difference between success and achievement. So we oftentimes measure whatever we're doing now by the successes in the past, because we were able to accomplish something. We think that automatically translates into the new thing that we're doing. But each success has its own woes, has its own challenges, has its own influence, has its own threats. And so you can't treat one success over here like it is going to be a success over somewhere else, right? That means you got to think about the anxiety that you might feel. Can you keep this up? Going into the entertainment industry or going into the filmmaking industry, becoming an actor, actress, right? I think that's a very mind-wrecking choice, because you may do great on one film, but can you replicate your ability for the next film? Because if you don't, you're like a one-hit wonder, right? And so studios and book publishers and any other types of related organizations, they need to be able to make money off of you consistently. That's why you have publishers who ask you, okay, when will you have your next book? And any book that you have needs to be translatable into some film or online web series or anything like that. It has to be convertible in a sense, right? That we can get not only books out of you, but we can turn them into an HBO series or a Hulu series or a Netflix original or something like that, because they need to be able to get money. Can you do that? That's something you can't look at your one book and say, okay, that's enough. No. If you want to be a screenwriter, if you want to write films, okay, and you get a production company who's interested in your work, they're going to consistently ask you, so how many other scripts have you written? I remember something that Spike Lee said in an interview, that these people today, they think that the one script is the only thing they need. But organizations, studios, production companies are looking for more. You should have more scripts, because you need a portfolio. You need a portfolio. You need something that tells them that that you are serious. about this. So successes are intoxicating. Before you even approach the industry, any industry, especially if you want to write or act or something like that, you need to build a body of work. I don't know how long that work needs to be, but it needs to be a body of work. Like if a person wants to be an artist, they don't just draw one painting. They need a collection, because if a museum is ever interested in showcasing their work, they're going to need a ready collection, or be ready, or have something. Like, I love that show. It's about the clothes. I forget, but it's a sewing competition, and it's by that model lady. I forget her name. That when they are showcasing their work at the end of the season, they're not showcasing two pieces. You learn how to create a piece by, say, like instruction. Here's what you're going to create for the week. But by the end, you should have built your capacity to actually showcase a whole collection. And it has to be very distinct enough, but cohesive. Each piece has to be distinct, but the whole collection has to be cohesive. And so now, if you win the competition, can you replicate that skill at the next level? That's why, while no one knows your name, no one knows who you are, that's the time to practice building a collection, right? And then, of course, there's a difference between success and achievement. Success is momentary. It is little things that you do, and then you get some kind of mark for it. You get a hand clap. It's a success, right? Achievement is it's something that would take you a long time to accomplish. So you have this single definable problem that you want to accomplish. Say, for instance, you want to resolve the crisis in Syria, right? The humanitarian crisis in Syria. And now it has become crises, so it's more than one. Well, that's not something that's going to be resolved in a year, not even 5 years. That's going to take 10, 15, 20, almost our lifetime to resolve. Your part might be 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and then you solve a part of that crisis, and that's achievement. So success is something that you can accomplish. If you take a course, you endure the course, you complete the course, and you get a grade, that's success. But if your field requires you to take multiple degrees, like becoming a doctor, that may have a form of achievement in it. But once you get into your specialty, the achievement is the problem that you solve, that takes a long time to solve. The 5-year plan must include research before transitioning to the next level. This requires assessing where you are in your career, researching where you want to go with your career, and planning the process based on the expectations of the career/industry. This requires assessing where you are in your finances, researching where you want to go with your finances, and planning the process based on the expectations of your financial capacity. This requires assessing where you are in your education, researching where you want to go with your education, and planning the process based on the expectations of your career plan. So they're all sort of intermingled. And financial capacity is the thing that sort of links everything. It's hard to make the moves that you want to make if you don't have the financial capacity. It's hard to increase your knowledge by maybe getting another degree if you don't have the financial capacity. It may be hard to move up the career ladder if you're not paid more, which might not increase your financial capacity. But the 5-year part of your planning and your self-assessing will help you to be able to gauge where you are. The 5-year plan must include journaling your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. At 5 years, what is your current strength? How have you developed your strength? What is your weakness? How have you resolved your weaknesses? What is your opportunity? How have you used your opportunities? And then what is your threat? How have you hedged against threats? So you should have collected strengths by 5 years. There should be like a major strength that you continue to hone and develop, but then you begin to increase your capacity in terms of strengths, right? It depends, if you are, say for instance, you want to major in math and you become a tutor, okay? Well, one of your strengths is that you know how to write out the math problem just, like the snap of a finger. But as you increase your capacity by taking courses, right, you realize you pick up another strength. And the next strength is you being able to teach math to somebody. Not necessarily as an official teacher, but you become a tutor or something like in a math lab, and you have to deal with, different students who need help with understanding math. And so now you are picking up an additional strength to teach math to somebody. So now you have a collection of strengths, right? And so just begin to continue to assess that. Your weakness, so you realize your weakness might have been at planning. You're not good at scheduling, or you don't get somewhere on time, right? So then you talk to a counselor about it. You got some help. You read some books, and you began to tackle one weakness at a time. And so you resolved one of your weaknesses about not getting to places on time by leaving early enough so that you can be there on time, right? Versus you getting to the car and the interview is at 1 o'clock and you arrived in the parking lot at 1 o'clock. Then your opportunity, you realize that the people around you may be opportunities for you to glean from, right? You have a sister or a friend who tends to be better at the thing that you are struggling with, or you had a professor that you asked a question and he sort of gave you a good understanding about it, so you use that as an opportunity to increase your understanding, right? So opportunities is really all about learning and adding to your knowledge base. That's what I feel, that there's always an opportunity to learn, in order to increase, in order to resolve any sort of issues that I have. Then your threat, again, is always you. So if you feel like you don't need to assess your strength or your weaknesses or your opportunities, then that's a threat, because eventually you're going to have to do that as you move up the next levels. So let's look at each of the, let's look at the acronym. So 5-year plan strength. The 5-year plan must include journaling your strengths. So assessment of strengths might include reviewing and critically thinking about how well you do something. For example, if you are great at writing and you want to do something with your writing, then you should have a portfolio of writing. You never wait until you make it to begin writing. You should always write until your transition comes. A strength might be how well you communicate, plan. Continue to develop that skill. Weakness. So the 5-year plan must include journaling your weaknesses. So assessment of weaknesses might include reviewing and critically thinking about your struggles. For example, where are you overextended financially? Being overextended financially will affect other areas in your life, both professionally and personally. Develop a plan to address overextension. And this is where we are usually overextended in finances, and it likely is because you are giving your money to somebody who really doesn't need it, who keeps saying he or she needs the money, but they won't go and get a job or something like that. So that might actually be a struggle for you. The 5-year plan must include journaling your opportunities. So assessment of opportunities might include reviewing your options. For example, what are your career or education or small business options? Understanding your options and the timeline with which to consider and implement them will affect all areas in your life, both professionally and personally. Develop a plan to address opportunities, specifically when they are good or untimely. So One of those opportunities a lot of times comes at you when you have a friend who says, okay, let's go over here and let's go visit this organization because they're giving a free class. It may be a schedule that is not working with your current schedule, and it may be inconvenient, but it's also free. Now you don't always need to go to everything that is free, because it might be a time waster. But if it's something connected to something that you're doing and you're struggling, say for instance you're struggling with character development in your novel, right? And the class just so happens to be a class on how to build better character in your novel. Okay, that's a class to go to. They may have free resources. You get to talk to somebody there, gain some insight. That is an opportunity. So you have to weigh every opportunity to determine if it is a true opportunity or if it's just an option. You may be able to get that same opportunity on your college campus, at your job, or just by simply researching on the internet as well. Threats. So the 5-year plan must include journaling your threats. Assessment of threats might include contemplating your internal beliefs. For example, you are always your own worst enemy. Vacillating between decisions, attitudes, and beliefs will always affect every area of your life, both professionally and personally. Develop a plan to address your own beliefs about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. And that last one is very interesting, because happiness means different things to different people. Happiness for some people might be sound finances, that I feel happy when I have money. I don't have to have $1 million, but I do need to have some kind of money. I don't want to be broke, right? But some people don't care too much. Some people actually want a lot of money. They want $1 million because it gives them the type of freedom that they don't necessarily have to work on a job, but they can work when they want to work, right? Life and love, it depends. What does love mean to you? What does love mean to the other person? Have the conversation. I've always said in all of my audios that we don't have conversation anymore. We just jump to the sex. And then your beliefs about life. What are your core values? What's your own personal mission statement? That's important. Knowledge check. So 5-year plan, considering your academic, professional, and personal goals, especially in pursuit of financial stability. Answer the following. What are your 5-year planning strengths? What are your 5-year planning weaknesses? What are your 5-year planning opportunities? What are your 5-year planning threats? So the most important thing about your 5-year plan, I think it always has something to do with academic and professional, what you want to do with yourself in terms of your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But I kind of want to think about your personal goals, because what you do in your personal life affects your academic and professional. So where are you, if you're struggling and you are overextended financially, what are your strengths there first? Meaning, in order for somebody to come and ask you, in order for you to be overextended financially, that means you must have the finances. So people keep asking you because they know they can rely on you. So then the strengths will be that you always have money, right? That you have learned by 5 years now to make sure to have money. The weakness might be still the overextension, and that the weakness might also be you run your mouth. You tell all your business. Why is it that everyone is coming to you for money? Why can't they go and just go get a job and handle the situation themselves? So you're teaching people how to use you, for one. You're teaching people how to be dependent, for two. You're teaching people how to basically use you as a mule. So use you to fund their lifestyle, right? So that overextension has a lot of implications. The opportunity could be to challenge the person with the goal of them not coming to you with money. So One of the opportunities could be, and I had to learn this myself because I was overextended. I always ran my mouth. I always volunteered my money. So then I prayed about it because I was tired, and God gave me this sort of answer to the problem. Tell the person who's asking you for that money that this is um, a bill money. You know, it can be a bill money or something like that, and that you're going to need it back when the bill comes. And if you give them sort of like a target, if you give them a guideline, a deadline, or a responsibility to return it, they might think twice about asking you for it. If they play games and say they don't have it, but they come over your house with some new sneakers and a new hairstyle, that's telling. That's more than enough to tell you, okay, I'm going to have to cut back on what I do for this person because they're not taking it seriously and they're asking me for something that they don't really need, right? So the opportunity is always to is one of those teachable moments, you know, that our parents usually do with us. A teachable moment. Create a teachable moment. Maybe make it a lesson. So, for instance, you need $150 from me, and you could say, well, you're gonna have to pay it back in increments of, I don't know, 2 increments or 3 increments or 5, right? I'm gonna put you on a payment plan, and then we're gonna talk about also, you know, finances. So here's like a little handout or something like that. But there's you engaging. It might sound kind of weird to the person, and you might think it might be a little useless. But if you do that, you might end up creating something that could turn into a book, that could turn into an online learning school or something like that. So there's opportunity to learn and teach as well. And then the threat in terms of you being overextended financially, eventually you're not going to have what you need to take care of yourself if you continue to cover other people. One of these days, you're going to give over your rent not knowing that you're giving over your rent. Or you could give over your rent and lose your job the same day you gave over your rent. You know? So, again, you are always your own threat. So, the 10-year career plan, knowing the requirements for advancement. You base a 10-year and or career plan off the objectives of your industry. So what does your industry require for movement between career levels? Do you have budgeting, scheduling, supervising experiences? Working first as a coordinator and then as a supervisor would expose you to the requirements of supervision. You base a 10-year and or career plan off continuing education requirements for your profession. So, what licenses and certificates are required for your entry and continued investment into the field? What are the consequences for not ensuring your licenses are up to date? And you can research this information via your industry organization website, as well as on the state and or federal websites that govern the industry. So there are certain fields that require you to complete continuing education, and you must have a license. And if you don't ensure your license is up to date, you're not valid. It's like the person who doesn't have a driver's license or is out of date. It has expired. Okay, then you're not valid. You're going to receive a ticket, right? It's the same thing in your own field. That, say, for instance, we're going to get into the accountant. Um, the accountant must have a CPA license because the accountant signs the financial statements, and anyone who signs the financial statements must have an up-to-date license. Otherwise, the company could be charged with fraud, right? So when you are thinking about your 10-year career plan, you want to think about it in terms of you being able to make sure that you know what your field actually requires and what it requires of you continually or in perpetuity until you quit the job. You base a 10-year and/or career plan off establishing records of successes from entry level, supervisor, and middle management levels. What are the standard record of accomplishments necessary to move between levels? Conducting an information interview with someone in the field would provide the answers you need. So the standard record, so say for instance, the field is a sales oriented environment. So you know you have to meet quotas. There's no way around that. You have to meet a certain number of quotas. Everyone, if they're getting into like the stock market, financial investment fields or whatever, everyone is a broker, right? You pass the Series 7 license test, right, to get the Series 7 license, and then you go in as a broker and you're trading, right? And you have to meet a certain list, a certain quota, right? And that's, I don't know how long that is, right? Because I'm not a stockbroker, but you have so long to meet that quota. And then the next level could be managing accounts or something like that, right? And you make sure that you bring in consistent money, accounts, and funding, and you keep you don't lose any client. So you do whatever you need to do to keep that client. And then the next level could be you managing people, right? A few people up under your management, your supervision, and you make sure that they continue to manage clients, keep funding, meet their quotas, etc. So that's a standard record of accomplishments, level by level. That's something that you should know. You don't come into that environment saying you're going to do something new. It doesn't work like that. Everyone has to pay their dues. Everyone has to move up, and everyone has to meet their quotas. Everyone has to move up in a logical, ordered fashion. Now, once you get up there and you are up there at that administrator levels, you may be able to do some different wrangling. You might be the person who takes the client out to dinner. Some of your duties, you begin delegating them more. And then some duties might be that you give commentary on a news, cable news program or something like that. Then you might consult. Later, you might decide that you want to have your own investment organization, financial organization, right? And then that sort of increases your capacity. But you've had all of that time working through your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats to now realize that you can do this. Preparing the 10-year career plan. So I want to get into sample research and preparing to become an accountant and how to use Bureau of Labor Statistics. So you should be familiar with this. If not, this is off the Department of Labor website, and it shows you basically how to prepare yourself for your field. So let's look at the accountant. The reason why I like to use the accountant more than any other sort of sample job description is because people don't really understand what accountants really do. And I teach this in my class as an example to help students understand that the accountant is the type of person who is holed up in an office day in, day out with no window or one window, walls, barely take a lunch, and they are looking at numbers all day, every day, the rest of their lives. Now, as you move up, it might change, right? And then if you move down, you will be an accounting clerk, right? And they have a little bit more flexibility. But there has to be high attention to detail. If you're saying Here it is, you got to work around 7:30 or 8 o'clock, right? And your lunch is usually somewhere around 11, 12:30, or something like that. If you're saying by 12 o'clock, I'm tired of looking at these numbers, this is not the field for you, because being an accountant, that's all you do is look at numbers. You look at numbers all day. You have to interpret numbers. You got to write reports about numbers, right? It's a numbers game. Now, if you care about numbers, but you may not want to become an accountant, you can get into finance or something like that. But no matter what, with an accountant or an auditor, that's all you look at from day to day. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to just highlight a few things here. So with an accountant, you need at least a bachelor's degree in accounting. And you need to complete certification. So if you don't have a license, if you have a bachelor's degree in accounting but no license, you are no different than an accounting clerk. And they don't usually give people with a bachelor's degree a job as an accounting clerk. So as you are preparing for transition while you are in college, you need to prepare for that test, because you have to take that CPA test in order to get the license, in order to get the job, in order to sign financial documents, right? So there's an accounting degree. Usually, to know your field, you need to know if you need a master's degree. You need to know that field, so that industry, that organization. So if you're at the lower level accountant, like a junior accountant, you may still be in training, right? So they may take you on as a boutique organization, take you on and say, in about 2 years, you need to take that test and pass that test, right, before we even consider moving you on, right? Well, you will know if they care about those things by looking at a sample job description. Go to the organization you think you might want to work for, go to their job listing and see if they have an accountant position. And if they're asking for all those X amount of things just to come in, even as a junior accountant, then that gives you planning time. That means you need to take some time to plan how you are going to accomplish that, pay for that fee to take the test. And then some universities offer specialized programs, right? And then you usually gain experience through internships with public accounting or business firms. Another thing you want to think about in terms of your education preparation, if you want to work in public service, then it is good for you to get a bachelor's of science in accounting, but then get a master's in public administration. So that means you know the accounting aspect of it, and you may end up having to get a master's in accounting as well. But at least you get that foot in the door. But the public administration is access to the local government industry. So now you understand the industry, what it requires, what the financial statements look like within that industry, what the process is, right? So those are things you want to consider in terms of education preparation. If you're thinking about licenses, right? So any accountant who files a report with the Securities and Exchange Commission is required to be a licensed, certified public accountant. So if your organization is a publicly traded company, they are required to file with the SEC, right? And so sometimes, as noted here, employers may pay the costs associated with the CPA exam. It just depends on the company. CPAs are licensed by their state's Board of Accountancy. So becoming a CPA requires passing a national exam and meeting other state requirements. All states require CPA candidates to complete 150 semester hours of college coursework to be licensed, which is 30 hours more than the usual 4-year bachelor's degree. Many schools offer a 5-year combined bachelor's and master's degree to meet that 150 hour requirement, but a master's degree is not required. But that's important to know. that if the CPA license requires, the test requires you to meet 30 hours beyond your regular 4-year bachelor's degree, and if your school, your program offers a 5-year combined program, it's better to take that program. So that means that gives you 5 years of planning into your field, taking maybe internships and volunteer opportunities, etc. But that gives you an opportunity. All states use the 4-part uniform CPA examination from the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which you might end up having to join as an organization member. Candidates do not have to pass all 4 parts at once, but most states require that candidates pass all 4 parts within 18 months of passing their first part. All states require CPAs to take continuing education courses, including ethics, to maintain their license. So if you go on BLS.gov, this is the best place to show you, to help you plan your entry into the field, so that you're not confused. You don't you don't get your diploma and then apply for jobs, and then when they say you need a master's degree or you need a CPA license, you're not confused, you're not surprised. BLS.gov gives you that information, and then you sort of pair it with the information about the company and what they also require. And remember, companies and academic institutions take all their information from the Department of Labor website, Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the information that you see on their website, on the company's website, or the academic institution program website, that's all secondary information to this primary information, because they take all of their information from Bureau of Labor Statistics. So in terms of advancement, so you need to know what is required in terms of advancement. So usually anyone who wants to become a top executive or financial manager under accountant usually have some kind of background in accounting, for one, internal auditing, or finance. Entry-level public accountants may advance to senior positions as they gain experience and take on more responsibility. Those who excel may become supervisors, managers, partners. They may even open their own public accounting firm or transfer to executive positions in management, accounting, or internal auditing in private firms. Management accountants, and this is another thing that you want to know, because again, fields are becoming very specialized. It used to be that you just majored in business administration, but now it's business administration with a specialization in accounting, finance, investment, nonprofit, international relations, etc. So if you decide that you wanted to go for accounting, there are different types of accountants. There's management, public, finance, cost, right? So management accountants often start as cost accountants, junior internal auditors, or trainees for other accounting positions. As they rise through the organization, they may advance to become accounting managers, budget directors, chief cost accountants, or managers of internal auditing. Some become controllers, treasurers, financial vice presidents, chief financial officers, or corporation presidents. Now, this is all up under management accounting. Accountant. Public accountants, management accountants, and internal auditors may move from one type of accounting and auditing to another. Public accountants often move into management accounting or internal auditing. Management accountants may become internal auditors, and internal auditors may become management accountants. However, it is less common for management accountants or internal auditors to move into public accounting, right? So that's giving you a distinction, that if you are a public accountant, you may move into a management accounting or internal auditing. But if you are a management accountant or internal auditing, it's less likely that you will move into public accounting, because those are two different industries. I think they are hinting at the fact that those are two different industries. So if you know you want to get into service, public service, you need to gear all of your efforts towards you getting into public service, and you tailor your individual programs in preparation towards that. But if you want to work for corporate America, you wouldn't get a master's of public administration. You may get a master's of business administration and maybe specialize in certain types of accounting or finance. So important qualities are important. And what you will often see is, remember that there needs to be a very high focused, conscientious effort towards, um, accounting for detail. So you got to be a person for an accountant to have analytical and critical thinking skills. So these are the types of people who critically evaluate data, identify issues in documentation, suggest solutions. For example, internal auditors might detect fraudulent use of funds, and public accountants may work to minimize tax liability. So you got to know the difference, right? Communication skills. So the time that you do come out of that office, you got to be able to communicate what you have found. So you got to be able to listen to and discuss facts and concerns from clients, managers, and other stakeholders. You can't come into meetings and say, okay, everything's all right. That's not how things work in that particular environment. You must also be able to discuss the results of their work, both in meetings and in written reports. When people say English is not necessary, well, wait till you get to the levels where you are required to write reports, because you got to be able to communicate in writing your initial issues, problems, research question, hypothesis, or whatever, and then what those results were, and then what your solution might be to resolve that issue. You got to be able to speak that, write that, right? Detail oriented. You must pay attention to detail when compiling and examining documents, especially for tax. Math skills. You got to be able to analyze, compare, interpret facts. Advanced math skills such as calculus, statistical analysis, right? And then lastly, organizational skills. So you got to be a person who is organized, because you got to be able to organize facts and data and information and statistics. And we got to be able to find that information. If you're referencing something and using a citation referencing method or style, we need to be able to find that information. That's why library science is a very important major, as well as course, right? With library science, you learn how to group and classify information, right? So that it is retrievable. And when you are in certain types of fields that are highly specialized and highly detailed and require a lot of analytical and critical thinking and detail-oriented strategies, the most important thing is being able to access that information. You don't want to make it hard for people to be able to find what they need, because your numbers become their numbers if you are in this field. And if they need to support their numbers, they need to be able to access your numbers. So you can't go around trying to hide your numbers. So knowledge check, 10-year career plan. What are the advanced degree requirements for your field? Although you may have a bachelor's degree, does advancement require a master's degree? What are the licenses and certificate requirements for your field? Does your field require completion of an exam for certification? What are the continuing education requirements for advancement? And then what are your important qualities central to sustaining your hold on that position? How long do you want to stay in one position before moving forward into another position? And, as you increase your capacity and your desire to want to move up, continuing education coursework is already required. But if you want to move up and it requires a certain level of skill set, then you may have to take other types of courses in other types of ways. So what are your financial plans? This means planning for legacy. This section will look at financial investment plan, estate and wills plan, and then tax plan. So, financial plans, finances, and investments. A financial plan is a comprehensive evaluation of the following for a single individual. So, current pay, future financial state, variables to predict future income, asset values, and then withdrawal plans. So a financial plan includes the following: a budget, which organizes the individual's finances and creates goals for spending and saving in the future; allocation, which you distribute future income to expenses such as rent and utilities; and then reserves income for short-term and long-term savings. Allocation, I think, is most important because all of us on some level have a budget and we may be working towards reserve, but allocation determines priorities, what we consider as priority. And if you remember a few slides back, we were talking about being financially overextended. That tells you right there that your priorities are all mixed up, that you are allocating, you're developing all of your attention and efforts to allocating to the wrong places. Individuals who are grown individuals, period. And they are 100% responsible for themselves. And if you find someone, again, coming and asking you for money all the time, and you give that to them, despite the fact that you are a grown individual and have to take care of yourself, and the only money that you have is the money that is for you to take care of yourself, then there's an allocation issue that you're going to have to resolve. That's a weakness, and it's a threat, right? So budget, allocation, and reserve. The financial plan, which may include an investment plan, will allocate funds for the following: so risk management, estates, college, and then retirement. So knowledge check, SWOT for financial investment plan. What are your financial strengths? What are your financial weaknesses? What are your financial opportunities? What are your financial threats? So the fact that you know how to develop a budget and you've been working on your reserves, trying to save an emergency fund, is a strength. Your weakness is you giving into the temptation to people please. So every time someone comes around and needs something from you, because they know how much money you make, you got a good car, you got a nice house, so they can they can basically figure out just how much you make, right? That's why I think when you make a lot of money, I don't think you should showcase it so quickly. Get a simple house, get a simple car. People can still ask from you, but here it is, you got a $250,000 home. They know you make at least something. You make more than $50,000, right? What are your financial opportunities, which are always teachable moments in this way? So these are always learning moments. So if you don't know something, if you're struggling with something, you can always learn. And then what are your financial threats? That if you continue to people please and cover everybody else, you're not going to be covered yourself. Estate planning, so beneficiaries, inheritance, and taxes. So estate planning considerations. Creating an estate plan will require you to make decisions about the following. So how assets will pass to your beneficiaries, how you will minimize federal taxes assessed on gifts and estates, how you will minimize state taxes on estate or inheritance taxes, how you will use the gift tax exemption to transfer assets while you are still living, how the taxable estate will pay estate and inheritance taxes before assets are distributed to beneficiaries. So we're going to address these bullet points in the next slides. All right, so here are the sample estate planning documents that you would need to create or have created for you. You will need to seek an attorney and tax advisor to guide you in creating and filing the appropriate documents. The estate planning documents include the following: a will, a living will, the advanced medical directive, and then the durable power of attorney for healthcare. And we're going to discuss all four. So the will. A will allows you to communicate your wishes. When you do not have a will, the state decides how to distribute your assets. This is called dying intestate. The elements of a will include the following. So there is a designation of an executor, the persons who carry out the provisions of the will, the beneficiaries, the person inheriting the assets, the instructions, information about how the person will receive the assets, and then the guardian, information about who will guard the children. The will designates the beneficiaries of bank accounts and real estate, since these are examples of assets that do not permit the naming of beneficiaries. Assets that permit the naming of beneficiaries and direct transfer of assets without involving the will include IRAs and investment accounts. You can avoid the probate process, associated fees, and certain taxes. However, assets that pass through the will typically go through the probate process, which is a legal process for settling an estate with or without a will. Assets that permit the naming of a beneficiary do not undergo probate. So these are the assets that are subject to probate, and then the assets that are not subject to probate. So retirement investment accounts that are missing beneficiaries or transfer of death instructions. So usually with the retirement and investment account, there's always an option that you can provide transfer of death instructions. Cash accounts that do not allow TOD or transfer of death. Real estate, personal property, and any asset held tenants in common. And then assets not subject to probate, because they usually allow for you to name a beneficiary. Retirement accounts, IRAs with a named beneficiary, trusts, insurance policy proceeds, investment, brokerage, cash accounts with transfer of death instructions, and then assets with joint ownership with right of survivorship. So in all these individual terms, real estate and investment and financial terms, you can always research on your own and get more information, because I don't want to give you an example or content for it, because you would always need to consult an attorney in terms of writing the will. And so it is much better that you get this information in terms of understanding it from a licensed attorney. The advanced medical directive is a written statement that outlines the desired medical treatment should an individual become incurably ill. The United States recognizes two types of advanced directives, a living will and then a durable power of attorney. So the living will. The living will permits a person to specify the treatment he or she wants or do not want in case of a terminal illness, coma, and or near-death situation. The language might include determining whether there is a reasonable expectation of recovery and if he or she should be kept alive through medical intervention of any kind. The living will may specify pain-relieving medication even if it shortens life. Living wills ensure personal control, but there is no guarantee. They are limited to people with terminal illness or who are expected to die shortly. Sometimes some doctors do not always follow living wills. Since they can be ignored, a durable power of attorney is necessary. So the durable power of attorney. The durable power of attorney for healthcare authorizes the appointment of another person to make healthcare decisions on one's behalf. The appointment of the other person may be a family member, but it can be someone else requiring a short statement. So I just want to stop right here before I go into the short statement. As you undoubtedly understand that as a single adult, these are some of the decisions that you have to make, and you have to know that the people that you appoint or include in your will or in your living will or in for your durable power of attorney, you can trust. It's very important, because if you're not going to get married and you're going to be a single adult, or if you do decide to become married or pursue marriage, you got to be sure that that when you put this person in your will or living will or use as a durable power of attorney, that you can actually trust this person, that they won't just cut the cord. If you remember Tyler Perry's movie Diary of a Mad Black Woman, when the husband decided to leave his wife and stay with his mistress, he kicked the wife out of the house, but then he had later trouble, and which led him to be seriously injured by his client, and he was in a coma, I think maybe on life support, and the mistress wanted to cut the cord. She didn't want to think about it. She didn't care about it. Now here it is. The wife was so concerned about a man who just kicked her out of the house, about his life, that she wasn't willing to cut the cord. So it does make a big difference who you choose in life. Whether you stay single and you have a family member or friend you will use to make certain types of decisions, healthcare decisions, or a husband if you later decide to pursue marriage. So I just wanted to add that before we go into the sample statement. So here's a sample short statement, and it is courtesy of the Office of the Attorney General, State of Illinois. And this is a sample statement. So I hereby appoint, and then the name of the person, as my attorney in fact or agent, to act for me and in my name in any way I could act in person, to make any and all decisions for me concerning my personal care, medical treatment, hospitalization, and health care, and to require, withhold, or withdraw any type of medical treatment or procedure, even though my death may ensue. I would like to think that if you got sick, I wouldn't be so quick to pull the plug. I would go off somewhere and pray to God about it, go read my Bible. I will consult more than one doctor. I would do all that I could before I make that final decision. So that's something that I want you to think about, because you are appointing a person as an attorney, in fact, as your agent, meaning that person has agency over you in your time of need, to act for you in your name, to make any and all decisions for you concerning your personal care, medical treatment, hospitalization, and health care, and to require, withhold, or withdraw any type of medical treatment or procedure, even though your death may ensue. So if you're going to withhold or withdraw any type of medical treatment or procedure, you would like for that person to have at least get some kind of consultation. You can't choose people who are very hasty in their decision, in their decision making, that they have a record, a whole historical record of being hasty in their life. Don't make really thought out logical decisions. A person who is a thought out logical person will go and look the information up. Everything is on the internet. They will go and look the information up. They will do all that they could to try to find out about your issue before they say, okay, I have no other choice but to pull the plug. So think about this statement very carefully, because this is your process this is something that you need to think about as you process becoming a single, becoming a dating single, or becoming a single pursuing marriage. Now let's check SWOT for estate planning. So what are your estate planning strengths? What are your estate planning weaknesses? What are your estate planning opportunities? What are your estate planning threats? One thing that is most important is that it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can still create an estate. Now, working with an estate attorney is going to cost you some money, right? But you can always create a basic estate plan, right? And so you may not know what your estate planning strengths are right now, or your weaknesses, or your opportunities, or your threats, because this may be a new concept for you. If because we always think just because we are maybe everyday workers and not rich people that we don't need an estate plan. You need a will. You know, it's important to have a will, and the will can be part of the estate plan. So I would encourage you to research this on your own, get more information, and understand, because if you have a house, you can name beneficiaries. You can create an estate. If you have any kind of asset or property or anything like that, you can still create an estate. So I just encourage you to think about that. So trust, protecting your legacy. What is a trust? A trust is a fiduciary arrangement that allows a trustee, the third party, to hold assets on behalf of a beneficiary. And we always think about trust in terms of rich people, but you still have beneficiaries. Trusts typically avoid probate, which allows the beneficiaries to gain access to assets quickly than if those assets were transferred through the will. When there is an irrevocable trust, which may not be part of the taxable estate, there may be fewer taxes assessed upon death. And we are going to get into irrevocable trust as well. Benefits of a trust. The benefits of a trust include passing assets outside of probate, saving time and court fees, and reducing estate taxes. Trusts allow you to control your wealth. If you create a revocable trust, the trust assets remain accessible to you during your lifetime. You can designate how assets will pass to the beneficiary upon your death. Trusts allow you to protect your legacy, which includes protection from heirs, creditors. So here are the types of trusts. So there's a marital or a trust. This provides the benefits to a surviving spouse, part of the taxable estate of the surviving spouse. Bypass or B trust. This provides a credit shelter trust, which will bypass the surviving spouse's estate to allow for the federal estate tax exemption for each spouse. Testamentary trust. This is outlined in the will and created through the will after death. Funds are subject to probate and transfer taxes. Irrevocable life insurance trust. This serves two functions. It excludes the life insurance proceeds from the deceased taxable estate. It also provides the liquidity to the estate and the trust beneficiaries. Charitable lead trust. This allows certain benefits to go to a charity and the remainder to beneficiaries. Charitable remainder trust. This allows you to receive an income for time period and the remainder to a charity. Generation skipping trust. This allows you to use the generation skipping tax exemption, so trust assets can be distributed to grandchildren or later generations without incurring the generation skipping tax or estate taxes on the death of your children. Qualified Terminable Interest Property Trust, or QTIP. This is used to provide income for the surviving spouse. When the spouse dies, named beneficiaries receive the assets. This trust is useful for second marriage context. This trust maximizes estate and generation skipping tax. Grantor Retained Annuity Trust, or GRAT. This trust is irrevocable. It is funded by gifts from its grantor. It is used to shift future appreciation on quickly appreciating assets to the next generation during the grantor's life. And then let's look at revocable. This is a living trust. It can pass assets outside of probate, meaning that it doesn't have to go through probate. You can still retain control of the assets during your lifetime, you or the grantor. It is dissolvable at any time and may become irrevocable at the death of the grantor. You can name yourself trustee or co-trustee, retain ownership and control over the trust during your lifetime, and make provisions for the successor trustee in the event of your death or incapacity. It can help you avoid probate. It is subject to estate taxes. It is treated like an asset during your lifetime. Irrevocable trust. An irrevocable trust transfers assets of the grantor's estate and out of the reach of estate taxes and probate. It cannot be altered by the grantor after it is executed. Once you establish the trust, you lose control over the assets. You cannot change the terms or decide to dissolve the trust. The irrevocable trust is preferred to the revocable trust when the aim is to reduce the amount of estate taxes by removing the trust assets from your estate. Because assets are transferred to the trust, you are relieved of tax liability on income that is generated by the trust assets. Knowledge check, SWOT for trust and wills plan. So what are your trusts and wills planning strengths? What are your trusts and wills planning weaknesses? What are your trusts and wills planning opportunities? And then what are your trusts and wills planning threats? Most importantly, that you definitely need a will so that any of your heirs or beneficiaries won't have trouble, getting at the assets. So that if it goes through the probate process or something like that, they won't have any issues, right? But since we don't always think that we should have a trust or will, I'm just going to encourage you to look this information up, research this information, make sure you have a good understanding of it. So tax planning, understanding injured spouse. So single individuals should discuss debt incurred and or accrued respectively before marriage, especially past due obligations owed to the IRS, child support, and for non-taxable student loans. Any partner accumulated debt incurred before marriage is the responsibility of that individual person. This means that a single individual's tax return would be protected. However, when spouses file jointly, which is termed as married filing jointly, the IRS will often apply one spouse's refund to resolve another spouse's tax obligation. So, the first pandemic COVID checks, there was an outcry from a post about a woman who couldn't get her check because her husband, her money went to her husband's outstanding child support. So his money and any money that they could have gotten together and the money allotted for the kids went to pay down that debt obligation. So she would be considered an injured spouse in that way. It could be a tax obligation, but this happens usually when you are married and you file jointly. This is called injured spouse, in which one spouse is negatively impacted for a debt that he or she does not owe. To receive a part of the refund, the spouse may petition under injured spouse, and then the spouse can file Form 8379, injured spouse allocation, to request their share of the joint refund seized to pay past due obligations of the other spouse. Past due obligations might include federal tax, state tax, child support, and or federal non-tax debts such as a student loan. So, the same thing can happen to you as well. You could have problems. You can default on your student loans, and then there's a notice that goes out for something like that. And when you file together, his money might go towards your student loan obligation. So this is something to ask and ask types of questions. That's why we need to have the conversation before we have sex. Summary of past due obligations might include one or more of the following. So child support payments, federal or state taxes, non-tax debt, student loans, certain unemployment compensation debt, and then alimony, of course. Knowledge check, SWOT for tax planning. So what are your tax planning strengths? What are your tax planning weaknesses? What are your tax planning opportunities? What are your tax planning threats? So strengths are just that you just need to, if you already have a good habit of paying bills, and paying your tax obligations shouldn't be a problem for you. You just have to adjust. Weaknesses might lead to, if you don't have exceptional pay history, you're going to have a problem. And when it comes to the IRS tax obligation, you could go to jail. So whatever weaknesses you have about paying bills, you're going to have to change your thinking about that quickly. And then, because you don't want them to attach a lien to your account, which is going to take all of your money. And then tax planning opportunities, meaning that you need to learn better how to pay your taxes or pay your bills in a timely manner. It just depends on what led you to that situation. And then what are your tax planning threats? The tax planning threats is that you could go to jail, or there could be a lien attached to your account or to your pay, to your work pay. And you don't want companies to know that you have tax problems. Premarital considerations, the need for conversation. So I'm going to push this like no other. So this section explores the following types of plans and topics. So the premarital plan, dating with purpose plan, premarital counseling, the prenuptial agreement. And this is all to get you to understand basically what you should do as a single adult. So the premarital plan, determining your readiness. So premarital counseling is dedicated to those couples who have become engaged and who believe they are ready for marriage. They seek premarital counseling as a requirement for marriage. The pastor or minister requires that the couple seek counseling as a precondition before marriage. However, premarital counseling should also be for the single woman. Premarital counseling is important to determine relationship readiness. So, are you equipped with the tools and skills to work through present and future conflicts? This is relationship readiness. Just because we desire to be in a relationship does not necessarily mean or translate that we are ready for a relationship. That if you are the type of person who like to do door slams and like to argue and like to leave and be gone for days like a wounded deer, you have trouble navigating relationships, particularly navigating the conflict within relationships. You're not a resolver of problems. And that's important to understand because relationship is fraught with problems. It doesn't seem like that when you're making love to somebody, but they are fraught with problems. There are solutions as well. What has been your record of success working through past and present conflicts? Can you go back and look and reflect on past issues that you've had, even just with friends? I'm I'm going to take the romance off the table for a minute. For friends, how long have you stayed mad at a friend? You get mad at each other, and then you don't talk to each other for 3 months. Well, you can't do that in a marriage. The friendship I don't know if the friendship is worth it, but the marriage is a completely different context, right? What are your individual needs, expectations, and preferences concerning marriage? This is important. And the only way you're going to know that is you got to know yourself, know thyself, know what you want. That's why it's not always a right thing to do to just go and seek out a relationship before you understand what you need. Because then you get into the relationship and you find yourself wasting other people's times because you should have thought about these things before you engaged in a relationship. What are your expectations? Do you want to have sex early? Do you not? Do you want to wait to sex until your marriage? Then you need to find somebody who thinks that same way. If another person's preference is to have sex after 2 months, but you don't want to do that, that may not necessarily be the right person, right? Some people are vain. Their preferences are to find a 10, a dime piece. They want a trophy wife. Okay, you may be just a regular person, still pretty, but you may not be their preference. And it's important to understand that because people will still marry you until they get their preference, and then they will divorce you, abandon you, and go and marry somebody else. And that's important to understand. Do you know what your needs are? Do you know how to communicate your needs? So that means, are you passive aggressive? You got a need, you want to say it, but you don't want to say it because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? Do you have a people pleasing problem, right? What are your actual needs for relationship? So handling stress, marriage requires that two partners be aware of stress and how to handle stress within the marriage environment. Are you a person who is proactive about handling stress? Do you talk things out when a difficulty arises? Do you shut down when stressed? Do you deal with stresses privately? You know, I do know how to handle stress, but and I'm not really afraid of confrontation in terms of somebody confronting something with me. I might still kind of resist, and I have gotten better at confronting things with them. But I'm also the type of person who goes off and needs to think about it too. And that may be confusing to a person who likes to stand there and talk it out. And a lot of times I do that because I just need to get somewhere and think and reflect on what they're saying. I'm not trying to resist it. I'm just trying to understand it. And in that moment, I might feel pressured just to acquiesce and then be mad that I acquiesced and then, bring it up again. And then sometimes we just may be triggered. Something that someone says might trigger us, in this belief that we're just not good enough. And everybody sort of flocks to that statement, that feeling that sometimes it's not always that you're not good enough. Sometimes you're just the issue, and that you need to resolve the issue. And the issue just is you just don't know how to resolve the issue. And so you're not good at resolving a difficulty. And that shows up in multiple areas of your life. But if it's showing up in the personal, where you are living your life with a husband or long-term partner or cohabitation partner, and you're not resolving anything, it's just going to continue to build and build and build and build to one day somebody's going to pack their bags and leave. And so that's something that you should be able to assess how you handle stress, because once you put two people together living together in one house, and now they're married and carrying out everyday married life issues, stress alone has its own challenges, and so you got to be able to handle stress. Finances. Marriage requires that two partners be aware of finances and how to handle finances within the marriage environment. Are you a person who believes that you should keep your finances separate? Are you a person who believes that debt should be brought into a marriage environment? Are you a person who believes that you must help pay a potential partner's child support? Or are you a person who believes in making more money than your partner? Finances is separate. It just depends. Um, I'm not sure today that I would have just one bank account with my future husband, right? I think we should have three bank accounts. I think I should have a bank account at my place, at my bank, and he should have his own bank account at his bank, and then we have a bank account that is solely for paying bills and filing taxes. So that if something happens and there's a tax obligation, it will be attached to that bank versus our individual banks, and we can still carry out our lives as married people. Also, I do have a fear of one day someone cleaning out my bank account and leaving me, completely um, financially helpless. Because once a person is placed as a joint owner on the account, they are no different than you are, and they can take whatever money they want to take out of that account. It gets a little tricky. I think there should be one will that we have together that is for the house and the kids and whatever. And then we each have an individual will for any assets that we have that are, separate charitable assets, things like that. So again, it gets a little tricky. Bringing debt into the marriage environment, if it's sort of like credit card debt and it's minor, that may be a little different. But if you're bringing, I've heard somebody say, I don't want to marry someone with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. And I was kind of offended by that because that person used college to, invest in themselves, right? And no one is expecting you. I'm not expecting you to pay my um, college debt, my student loan debt. But I said to myself, you wouldn't marry somebody with student loan debt. But that's that person's preference. That's that person's prerogative. They have every right. But then I began to think about it, and I said to myself, well, it's not right to bring into a marriage that level of debt, and that on some level you're going to have to resolve that, get it down to at least half or something like that, because you don't want someone to feel obligated to pay the debt that you incurred. And then child support. So then that means if you're not obligated to contribute to paying my debt, then I'm not necessarily obligated to paying your child support, because that's your child. The child is going to feel welcomed and loved in the house, but that's still your child. That's why I say separate bank accounts is important, because if there's a child support obligation issue, financial issue, then they're going to attach to his or her account, and we still need to be able to pay bills. And so that's why I think it's important. And many women have sort of helped pay their husband's child support, but I don't think we should do that anymore, because that is that person's child. He is responsible to pay for his child, and he needs to pay for his child. And then what about making more money than your partner? That just may be inevitable. It depends, it depends on your partner's field, what type of job he works, etc. So that may be unavoidable. Family decisions. So marriage requires that two partners make family decisions within the marriage environment. Are you a person willing to engage in mutual decision making? Or are you a person who must have the last word in decision making? Man is head of the house in a marriage. So ultimately, that last decision is based upon what he decides. Um, but it would be helpful to be partners on certain decision making. That's why sitting down, looking at the budget, looking at certain decisions, having a conversation, instead of just coming in and saying, I'm going to do this, right, regardless of what you think about it. It's much more productive. It's much more respectful. It doesn't mean that I'm against what you're doing. Let's just sit down and have a conversation about it so we both engage each other. And that's why it's important to understand how you handle stress, how you handle difficulty, how you handle challenges. Because if you're saying, I'm just going to make this decision on my own, well, you're basically still living single. You still have a single mindset, and you're going to have to eventually move that mindset on some things to a mutual mindset. And then there are other things you might just have the last word on. It just depends. Kids, marriage requires that two partners make decisions about having kids within the marriage environment. Do you want to have kids? Do you have the patience for kids? Are you willing to marry a partner who has kids? What are your preferences for child rearing? So, that first question, do you want to have kids, is a very important question. You should not force yourself to want to have kids if you don't want to have kids. It doesn't matter if you love the person you are married to. You should have asked that question much earlier, way before the marriage. So that if you ask that question and he wants to have kids and you don't, then you don't need to waste his time. Because even if you decide to change your mind and have kids, I think you're going to resent it. Somewhere you're going to resent it. You're going to resent the fact, you're going to feel like he pushed you into it, that the sex that you had that night that produced that egg, he willed it. And you didn't want it, and there's some kind of resentment that you may have. You may not necessarily treat the child wrong, but there's still something between you two that feels like a gap. It's also important to know if you have patience for kids. If you don't hang around kids right now, it's likely that you don't have patience for kids. I don't really have patience for kids. I think they're beautiful, they're wonderful. They always love me, but I'm a loner. I don't really need to have kids in order to make my life important. So it would be better to find somebody, or they found me, maybe he already has kids and they're all grown and he doesn't really want any more kids. That's a better mate for me than a person who wants kids, especially at a later life. Late in life. Are you willing to marry a partner who has kids? That's not a problem for me. I would venture to say maybe younger kids might be, even though I wouldn't treat them wrong. But a preference might be to have kids. My partner has kids that are already near grown, probably teenagers, and near college age. And then what are your preferences for child rearing? So preferences for child rearing are predicated on how you grew up and how your parents reared and disciplined you. If you're used to the belt, you're usually going to bring the belt into your family environment. If you're used to going to the corner and having a timeout, you're going to usually do the same to your own kids. So I'm not quite sure we need to move certain child rearing practices over into the child rearing that we need to do with our own children. I'm not quite sure that the belt is still necessary. I do think some discipline is necessary, but the belt itself might not necessarily be necessary today. You may have to maybe design a different strategy to help kids today, because you can punish them and they still do what they want to do. So I think the best way to mess with kids, in a sense, is to make them work. Increase whatever work they're doing, so that they tend to be a little bit upset with that. Careers. Marriage requires that two partners work and fulfill career expectations within the marriage environment. So what are your expectations about work and pursuing a career? Are you committed to your career? How will you ensure that there is flexibility in your career to meet the demands of marriage? What are your beliefs about a potential partner quitting his job or career? One thing about it, there's a difference between work and then pursuing a career. You can go to work, clock in, work, and then clock out. There's no career component. But pursuing a career is always going to take some kind of education component. It's always going to take some um, putting in your dues. It might take a shift in geography. You may have to leave and go somewhere else, right? So once you start something like that, that means you're going to have to be committed to it. And it depends on how far you want to take it. There are people who already know that they want to become deans of a department, of a division, right? There are people who already know that they want to become a vice president or a CEO of a company, right? And they sort of tailor all their efforts to doing it. It might take them 25 years to become a CEO, but they knew from somewhere inside their heart, mind, soul that that's what they wanted to do. So if you want that, you're going to have to find the partner who is okay with that. I'm not quite sure you can find someone who is chasing a career unless you are within the same industry, within the same specialty. Like for instance, you could be both attorneys and you want to work for you're like a public attorney and you want to work for the government, and you're making it you're working up the career ladder, hopefully working for the White House or something like that. Okay, well, you're both in the same context, the same environments, and you're both pushing to make it up those environments. That's a little different, because usually if you're working in the government, you are basically stationed in one city or one area, one state. There may be some kind of travel, right, depending upon who you are working for, but you're basically stationed. But when you work for corporate, there is a higher probability that you may end up having to move to another city and state for to serve another division. Then it gets a little tricky. So then, are you committed to your career? And then you have to think about the demands of marriage. That's why it may not be a good idea to bring a child into that kind of context until you both get to a place where you are stable in your career, not just financially, but you have moved so much up the ladder. Now you are directors wherever you are. And it usually takes you staying in the director position 10, 15 years before you even consider a vice president position. Okay, now that brings about some kind of stability. You can build from there. So even if you have a child, by the time you may have to relocate again, that child will be 10. That child would be 15. The child wouldn't want to leave, right? Because they wouldn't want to leave their friends, but it's a lot different than having to move a baby. And then what are your beliefs about a potential partner quitting his or her job or career? That's important too, because you're getting a lot of people who are very dissatisfied with their current jobs and careers, and they may want to leave. I'm not talking about a person who job hops, you know. I'm talking about a person who was serving in their job or career for 25 years and then they decide they want to leave. Or no, I'm sorry, 10, 15 years and they decided they want to leave. They haven't even spent the requisite time in order to get to retirement. Okay, well that's a little different. How will you judge that situation? Family and friends. So marriage requires that two partners be aware of the role of family and friends and how they influence the marriage environment. Do you run to your friends or family members when there is a conflict? Are you comfortable with giving friends and family money when they need help? How will you handle the inherent conflict when your partner must communicate with his ex-partner over their child or children? What would you do if your in-laws told your partner that he should not marry you? And this happens. I had an ex whose partner, whose aunt told him basically not to marry me because I was too dark, even though he was dark himself. And she pushed him to marry a light-skinned black woman, right? So this definitely happens. What would you do in that situation? Well, he pulled out and he agreed with the aunt, and then he ended up marrying a light-skinned uh, um, a light-skinned black woman. But they had known each other for so many years from high school. So I didn't feel really bad about that situation. And really, he was just not the right person for me anyway. But the family and friends, running to your family and friends, remember you did that as a single adult. When there was a conflict, you always went to your family and friends. You had this sister circle at the house. Everybody came over. Y'all ate some ice cream or something like that, and y'all came together to resolve your individual conflict. Well, you are married now. You will be married. You can't go and use your friends to resolve a conflict when you have a husband at the house. Another thing, are you comfortable with giving friends and family money? So that's another thing you got to discuss at the dinner table between you and your husband. You know, see, you still may end up doing it, but people want the respect of asking them. And it's not necessarily asking for permission, but just engaging in conversation about it. Okay. What will be, there's always an inherent conflict between your partner's ex and their children. So how would that happen? Because sometimes you get partners, the exes don't want you to be a disciplinarian with the children, but the children can't disrespect the new partner, who would be you. So there still has to maybe be coming together and talking about how you will approach the situation with the child, with their child not acting right at the house, right? There's always going to be some challenges, because as soon as you say the child is not acting right, the person interprets it as, oh, I have a problem child. That's not what I said, right? The child is not doing something right here, right? Sex. So marriage requires that two partners have sex within the marriage environment. So what is your sexual desire? What are your beliefs about pornography in the marriage environment? Do you understand that sex is part of the marriage environment? Do you believe in withholding sex in the marriage environment? So sexual desire is very important. Not everybody wants the kinkiness of sex. Maybe once or twice, but not like all the time, right? So some people like open marriages. Some people may be bisexual. If you are not bisexual, I would not marry a person who was bisexual, because to me it's still cheating. And so you run the risk of having too many people in the bed, right? Pornography, the person who loves pornography might get attached to it. So then whatever's going on the screen, they want you to do to them, right? Or they want to do to you. I don't think that's very healthy. I don't think pornography as a general rule is healthy. It's not a good, healthy option psychologically. Do you understand that sex is part of the marriage environment? So you can't go around withholding sex all the time. There may be moments when you have to withhold sex, maybe because you as a woman got your cycle, maybe because there's a pain or something like that. But you should not withhold sex out of a game, out of punishment or something, right? If your husband cheats, yeah, you may have to withhold sex, because giving him sex is only rewarding the cheating that he did. So you may have to talk things out, but sex is part of the marriage environment. Now let's check premarital plans. So do you think marriage is for you? Are you a loner? Do you prefer singleness? Do you prefer sex outside of marriage? And this is very important, because marriage may not be for everybody. Not, I have an audio on YouTube. Not everyone is built for a relationship. And sometimes, singleness in the Bible is a gift. It is a gift of singleness. That a lot of times you may do better accomplishing life and living and navigating life as a single person. I don't want to push anything on you in terms of some sort of ideology or whatever. You have to determine if marriage is for you. If you look at the previous slides and the questions posed, you should know if it is for you. To me, I'm a loner. I honestly don't need a whole bunch of people around me to live my life and to be happy. I'm not lonely. I don't cry about being a loner, right? I may have some other little issues or whatever, but it's not. I don't necessarily need. I need purpose. I need to accomplish the things that I'm supposed to do on this earth that God has called me. I would feel more regret that I didn't accomplish the task that God has for me to do than not getting married. So that's something, but I still may desire to get married as well. So like I said, I don't want to push anything on you. That's something that I have to consider, and that's something that you have to consider on your own. Dating with purpose plans, so determining objectives. So here are some questions. Do you believe in dating? How long do you plan to date if you decide to marry? Do you believe in having sex while dating? Are you aware of the new trend of dating rotations? Do you think people believe in courting? And dating is a very important question because focus, because do you believe in dating, and then do you believe in having sex while dating? You know, I never dated, and I've said this in previous audios. I never dated, sometimes to my advantage and sometimes to my detriment. To my advantage, I haven't had many partners. Because if you date and maybe 10 people a year and you have sex with 2 or 3 of them out of the year, and you look at that at 5 years, that's a heavy body count, right? And I had an understanding about that early. I wish I had had an understanding about other things, but I definitely had an understanding about that. To my detriment, it took me to my late 30s to 40s to understand game. Had I begun dating early, maybe in my 20s and 30s, I would have been exposed to game. It would have helped me to understand a few things, and then by the time I get to my 40s, I'm in a much better emotional and psychological state, right? So it took me that long for me to understand these types of things, and that's why I develop all these audios, and I created the curriculum, so those who struggle with that as well can understand it a lot quicker. Courting is also sort of like a thing that people don't do anymore. You have a few cases where people will say we're not going to have sex until we get married, and then they know in 6 months they're going to get married to the person, so they try to hold out, right? The new trend of dating rotations is a big thing now, and really it's no different than the mistresses that they the harems that you find in the Bible. People just basically having concubines and things like that. So establishing goals and objectives, creating a dating goal as a create a dating goal as a single individual. Determine how long you want to date if you plan to marry. Assess your potential partner's beliefs about courtship if you plan to marry. Establish short-term, medium range, and long-term dating goals. So is it that you want to date forever, or is it that you're dating to marry, or is it just you just want to date? What kind of frequency, what kind of people? So if you're going to enter the dating market, which is really the mating market, which is bifurcated into the sex and marriage markets, you want to create a dating goal so that you don't find yourself out there just dating just to be dating without a plan. So create a dating purpose statement in the same way that you write a life mission statement. Create a dating purpose statement. This is uncommon, but it could help to focus your efforts. So dating with purpose might include assessing the dating and sex markets without having sex. Dating with purpose might include having a conversation with each date to determine how men think about dating, having sex, and establishing life goals. Dating with purpose might include confirming that dating is not the right time for you, and it just depends on what you're doing. You can't date if you're trying to build a career, because you are so preoccupied with trying to move yourself up that the dating could get in the way of what you're trying to accomplish. So, sample dating purpose statement. If you're new to dating, maybe orientation up to 6 months, right? So you want to assess, engage, determine, confirm. Assess. My purpose for dating is to assess the dating market without having sex with any dating partner. My desire is to take it slow since there is no guarantee of success. meaning I may not find the partner that I'm going to find to be with the rest of my life. So therefore, there's no sense in really committing to dating with using sex. Engage. My purpose for dating is to become familiar with the dating market and participate with soberness and clearness of mind. Refraining from alcohol might be helpful. So it may not be a good idea to use alcohol while you're dating, because then it might lessen your inhibitions and you might find yourself in a situation before your time. Determined. My purpose for dating is not to have sex in the dating market for the first 6 months because I am unsure of who I am and what I want to do with dating. So you're basically going out just, feeling the market, right? Confirm. My purpose for dating is to confirm or disconfirm preconceptions about dating. So whatever I've been told about dating, I need it either confirmed or disconfirmed. Some experience with dating, so more than 6 months, less than a year. So there, reflect, identify, research, and confirm. So reflect. My purpose for dating is to reflect on the dating market, because remember, you've been dating for 6 months now. My participation in it without having sex, and determine if taking was worth the dating process. Identify. My purpose for dating is to identify my dating preferences and choosing based on ethnicity, economic, financial status, personality, and career aspirations. This is important because you're not trying to date everybody. You don't necessarily need to be vain, right? But you want to make sure that you target the audience, the types of men that you want to date based on ethnicity, based on economic status. It's important that the person have a job, period, right? Personality, you don't want somebody that is so disagreeable to the point that you can't even get through the date. Career aspirations, you want a person who does have some form of career aspiration, right? Ethnicity might be you want to date outside your race, or you only want to date within your race. Research. My purpose for dating is to continue learning about the dating market to ensure myself that the objective is sound. I will read articles and watch some videos on dating. So this is something that we don't do. This is the opportunities in the SWOT analysis, that the research is that teachable moment, is that learning opportunity, so you understand what really goes on. If you go on YouTube now, you got all types of men with their YouTube channels who bash women, who talk about dating, who talk about all types of negative qualities of dating. That is research right there. That is the information that you need to know, because men read you and they determine how and what way they can take you down. And I'm not saying it from a negative standpoint, but say for instance you didn't want to have sex that night, but somehow you ended up having sex. He didn't rape you or anything like that, but you lowered your inhibitions to the point that you found yourself in bed with the person. Confirm. My purpose for dating is to confirm or disconfirm what I believe about dating. So up to 6 months, you're trying to figure out, have your preconceptions about dating been confirmed, or are you being too hard on yourself when it comes to dating? So sufficient experience with dating. So you've had your year. So select, identify, set, and confirm. So select. My purpose for dating is to choose the dating partners that reflect my economic and financial status, temperament, and career and professional industry. Sex may or may not be necessary. Identify. My purpose for dating is to identify the best environments for dating that do not conflict with my economic and financial status, temperament, and career and professional industry goals. Set. My purpose for dating is to set a timeline for how long I desire to date, with or without purpose, and with the possibility of marriage in mind. Establishing the number of partners is important. And then confirm. My purpose for dating is to continue learning about the dating market, to assure myself that the objective is still sound going into the second year, and to confirm or disconfirm what I believe about dating. And this is important because if sex is on the table and you're at your 1 year, how many times you want to have sex with multiple people? If you set a goal to date with a purpose, you may go on 10 dates, but you're only going to choose two people to sleep with or something like that. That's fine. But how many years you want to do that now, right? So therefore, you have to make sure you are within the right timing and frame of mind, because if you eventually want to marry, you don't want your partner to know that you've had that kind of body count. You want something, that's why it's very important that you don't sleep with your date on the first night, because if that person is to become your partner for marriage, he's going to remember that it was okay to sleep with you and sleep with him, have a one night stand, because you weren't going to meet each other anymore. But if it turns into something else, to long-term dating leading to marriage, he's still going to remember that, and he's going to judge you more than you judge him. Knowledge check. So for the dating plan, there are 4 areas that are necessary to address while still single, dating, and considering marriage. First area, conversation. What should the conversation be between the date and myself? How many dates are necessary to engage in conversation? To what end is the conversation necessary? And you have to set the limits. If the person is marriage quality, then conversation is much more important here. If the person is only dating quality, and you know that there is no way it's going to convert to anything else, then the conversation may not have to be long. It depends on what your goal is, right? Second area, in terms of deal breaker, what are my deal breakers? So is cheating a deal breaker for you? That's usually the case. Cheating is a deal breaker for me. I'm not sure, because cheating takes a lot of time to plan out. It's not something that you just happens. No, it's something that you visualized in your mind, in your head, and you planned out, and then you found yourself cheating. Now, deal breakers, you have to, this is a dating plan. So if you're just dating somebody and he's dating somebody else too while he's dating you, that cannot be a deal breaker. Unless you come together and say, that we both won't date any other people. And then we're going to be exclusive. And then if he cheats, or if you cheat, then that would be the deal breaker. So third area, sex. Do I want to engage in sex while dating, given there is no guarantee of relationship conversion? What would be the consequences of not having sex during the dating phases? Okay, so the person might leave. If the person is very focused on wanting to have sex while they date you, he or she dates you, he dates you, then it may be hard to change their mind. They may not have sex with you, but be having sex with somebody else. And if they're having sex with somebody else, they might actually fall in love with that person. Then they might just abandon you altogether. So you have to find the type of person who has that kind of mindset, that they're not going to have sex while dating for a certain length of time. And then if you want to be married, you got to have find the kind of person who won't have sex until you actually both get married. Closing out past relationships. So when will it be necessary to close out past relationships? You can't bring in past exes and male friends into a marriage. It doesn't matter what you think. That's a different male energy, and you're supposed to focus on the male energy of your future husband. And so closing out past relationships are very important. You got to know when the time to do that, because it's a chance that you're taking. There's no guarantee that your marriage is going to work out unless you do the work, of course. But there's no guarantee. And if you let go of this friend over here and your marriage does not work out, you may never get that friend again. But you also can't hold on to the friend and hold on to your husband that kind of fear. So premarital counseling, communicating expectations. So the prenuptial agreement, where you need to determine and assess it. So basics of the prenuptial agreement plan. So courts are willing to uphold premarital agreements contrary to previous judicial scrutiny that they were only useful for encouraging breakups. Their prevalence, equality between the sexes, and court willingness to apply precedents has increased the credibility of prenuptial agreements. The prenuptial agreement must be clear, understandable, and legally sound. So, it's a contract. And so anyone who is signing a contract has to understand what they are signing. And so therefore, prenuptial agreements take some time to make sure that each party understands what is going on. It is a written contract formed before marriage to outline legal rights acquired through marriage. It further outlines what happens when there is a dissolution of marriage and or when the marriage ends by death. It supersedes default marriage laws established by state, especially those laws that govern the distribution of assets and property, including retirement benefits, savings, and the right to seek alimony. It may contain a waiver of surviving spouse's rights to claim an elective share of the estate of the deceased spouse. You can use the prenuptial agreement to pass separate property to children from previous marriages. Surviving spouses have a right to claim property from the deceased spouse, which leaves little for the children. The prenuptial agreement clarifies financial rights and responsibilities during the marriage. The prenuptial agreement protects spouses from debts. Without a prenuptial agreement, state laws that determine ownership of marital property and what happens to that property during divorce and or death. Property acquired during the marriage is considered community property, and that depends on statutes, and it is subject to distribution. Marriage is a contract. There are automatic rights afforded to each marital partner. Spouses may share ownership of property acquired during marriage, acquire and incur debt, and share in the management and control of marital property. Knowledge check. So prenuptial agreement plan. Considering your academic, professional, and personal goals, especially in pursuit of financial stability, answer the following. What are your prenuptial agreement planning strengths? What are your prenuptial agreement planning weaknesses? What are your prenuptial agreement planning opportunities? What are your prenuptial agreement planning threats? And this is something that you definitely got to consider, because people really get upset when you ask them to sign a prenuptial agreement. But if you remember just from the previous side, that it could help to outline obligations and debts that you can outline within the prenuptial agreement, that you are not responsible for their child support or their alimony or their tax obligations or their debt obligations. I think it's very, very important. I'm not going to push a certain ideology on this. It would just be important. It would just be a lot better for you to research this on your own in terms of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But it's not a bad idea for even the non-rich person to get to have their both partners sign prenuptial agreements. So conclusions, beliefs about mistakes. So I don't have a full conclusion. I just thought that this right here, this quote from the film Unfaithful, was very important. When I put this presentation together, I thought about it. The movie had just come on HBO, so it was very fresh in my mind. But this is the conversation that Paul Vartan is having with Connie Sumner in Unfaithful. Richard Gere was her husband. And she was talking about mistakes or something like that. And Paul Vartan made a very interesting statement that I did not catch. All the times I have watched this film, I did not catch it until now. And it could be because it was for me to catch it now. There is no such thing as a mistake. There is what you do and what you don't do. And it is as simple as that. It is black and white. It is not issues of gray. That there is the thing that you do, and then there's the thing that you don't do. And so if Connie did not want to have an affair, then she didn't have to do it. There was nothing that forced her to have an affair. She forced herself. She sought it out. She visualized it. She sought it out. She made the call. She visited him multiple times, and she had an affair. Period. She had already had an affair in her heart, emotionally, even before she got there. But there is no such thing as a mistake. There is what you do and what you don't do, and that's what I want to leave you with. That even if we're not talking about affairs in this pre-singles counseling coaching curriculum orientation, that if you find yourself getting into the dating market and the sex market, and then you get pregnant or something like that, and you didn't intend for that. You say that out loud. I didn't intend for that. I wasn't planning for that. Well, you actually were planning for that, because if you didn't use any protection, right, you were planning for it. But this is something, if you date with purpose, if you date with a goal, as a single individual, this will help you to hedge against that particular issue. If you don't want to have sex to lead with a baby, then you need to push for the partner to use contraception, or you need to push for yourself to use contraception, or perform a number of strategies like the pull-out game. I don't know. But this is you living a single life with purpose, with a plan, with a goal, so that things like this just don't pop up. And you say, oh, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I should have done better. Okay. Because you can't say that all the time. Once the child is here, that's the rest of your life. Once you get with the wrong partner who might introduce you to drugs, that is an addiction that's going to take some time to get over and resolve. Once you get involved with somebody that you finally and fall in love and find out that he's married, that's hard to get out of. You can get out of it, but it's hard to get out of. So that's why it's important to think about being single, understand, date with a person, establish objectives, because if you don't, you're going to find that what you do in your personal life is going to affect your academic and professional lives, especially your professional. You don't want Paul Vartan to come visit you at your job because you waited too long to cut it off, right? So I'm going to leave you with this as you think about your singleness and whether you want to stay single to single, whether you want to begin dating single to dating single, or whether you are interested in marriage, single dating, or dating single to single leading to marriage, right? So that's something that I want you to think about, and I thank you very much for listening to this lecture. All right, so hopefully you were able to gain insight from this video discussion. Please like, subscribe, and visit. So please like the video, hit the notification bell for more discussions. I am re-uploading all of my audios, so I needed to make some changes to them. You can visit my website for more content at reginayfavors.com. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email, reginayfavors@yahoo.com. Please also purchase the book. It's going to come out in spring 2021. So I had to make changes to my book to update it, and I also updated the title. So the original title was Bait, Hook, and Switch, Confessions of a Rebound Girl, and I have updated the title to Toxic Encounters, Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships. So right now I'm still basically editing it, and I want to make it available in spring 2021. So thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I am Regina Y. Favors. Have a great day.